Welcome to Fanfiction Audiobook. Marvel, God of Speed. Chapter 81. Manhattan Restaurant. The waiter in the black tuxedo almost slipped in front of Albert and handed him a menu. "Sir, this is the menu for our restaurant, please take a look." Albert nodded slightly, took the menu, and began to order. Unlike other restaurants, the signature dishes on the menu of Manhattan restaurants are never fixed, but change almost every day. Because his family's cuisine is not the food cuisine that is commonly seen. Eating here, there is only what you can't think of, and there is nothing you can't see. Albert is tall and handsome, and because he is a frequent visitor to the New York Daily News, he attracts frequent attention from the people around him as soon as he sits down, including many young and beautiful women. Albert had long been accustomed to this. He is not interested in beautiful women, only 363 in evolution and making money. Because of his identity, there are few women who dare to come over and talk to him, which is also very good, and he is happy to be idle. The meal was quickly served, a dish that Albert had never seen before, but it was not so strange that it was appetizing. Albert picked up his chopsticks and began to feast. After enjoying this whole table of food, it was already 11 o'clock. Albert instructed the driver and drove back to the villa. After getting up from the lunch break, he drove to the Star Laboratory without a driver. It's a day off for Olive Osborne, but Connors doesn't have a day off, he's a workaholic. Not to mention the usual rest days, even if it is a New Year's holiday, he can forget to sleep and eat for work. "Boss." Seeing Albert come in, Connors stopped what he was doing and got up to greet him. Albert waved his hand, motioned for him to sit down, and said, "It's okay, I'll just come and see, and you can go on with your work." Connors nodded, he was now immersed in the experiment, and it was really not good to be disturbed. Connors continued his work, while Albert moved around the lab. In the laboratory, there are nearly 200 researchers, large and small, plus researchers' assistants. Walking in on weekdays, it's a blackhead. But today, Connors was alone. Albert walked straight to the vibranium lab table. Vibranium is now placed in a square glass frame with a small glass tray inside it, and vibranium is placed on the glass tray. The tray is rotating at a constant speed, and the vibranium on it is also moving at a uniform speed. Vibranium, that's a good thing. Albert pressed one hand to the glass and looked at the small stone steadily. About 10 minutes later, Connors was almost busy with his work, and he came up behind Albert. "Boss, I'm done here, do you have any instructions for coming over?" he asked. Albert smiled and nodded, raising a hand and placing it on Connors's shoulder. "What a special researcher, this brain is smarter than the average person." Connors also looked at the vibranium in the glass frame, and muttered, "The properties of this metal are very special and rare, but it's a pity that we only have such a small piece in the laboratory, if only there were more." Listening to Connors's words, Albert only pursed his lips slightly, only such a piece of vibranium is indeed pitiful. If we could have more, we could have done some research. Connors didn't value vibranium for its commercial value, he did for its research value. If you read a violent novel, go to Novel Network. I've been soaking in the lab day and night for the past few days, and it's also because of this piece of metal. Well, Dr. Connors, is it possible that we created a vibranium of the same properties ourselves? After hearing this, Connors just pursed his lips and shook his head. "Boss, you also do research, you should know better than me, and it is simply impossible to create a vibranium." Albert pursed his lips, he also knew it was a fantasy. So as soon as he came back from the lab, he turned on his computer and went into the dark web, and summoned the spy on Wada's side to help him find some vibranium to send to the United States. "It's another price." The spy quickly replied, adding, "My name is Pak, sir, and I like it when people call me by my name." Albert's typing hand paused slightly, his fingertips raised, and when he fell again, there were two more words spoke in front of the line of words in the dialog box, and then he clicked the enter key to send the message OUT0. 100 million is too little. The man on the other side replied to Albert quietly, "Sir, those of us who do this business are very sensitive to valuable things, and vibranium is more than that. Indeed, those who do their job are extremely dangerous, and those who lick blood on swords must be very clear about whether each of their tasks is worth the price. If it's worth it, just do it, if it's not worth it, don't do it. If it's worth it, they will do it if they gamble their lives. It's not worth it, how many billions don't do it? Okay, 150 million. Albert was also generous and cheerful, and after only thinking for a moment, he decided to add half to the other party. Okay, deal. There was no wave on Poc's face, he deserved this price. Boss, do you think the spy can bring you vibranium back? When Raza asked this question, although it was a question sentence, the tone was a little sour. Obviously, he is a capable leader under the boss, and he has recently been injected with new energy, not to mention that it is not a problem to fight 1 against 100, with 1 against 1,000, or with 10,000. But why is it so big as looking for vibranium, that Albert doesn't look for himself, but for strangers who are thousands of miles away, have never met before, and don't know anything? Raza, I know what you're thinking. Looking at Raza with a worried look, he explained, I didn't let you go to Weyr because you have been by my side. 5.1, there are too many people who know you, and you rush to Weta, which is easy to expose. Secondly, you don't know the environment and situation over there, and you have to find out the background first, which requires a lot of time and energy. However, finding someone directly in the local area is very conducive to the completion of the task and the progress of my plan. But boss, how can you guarantee that the person you are looking for is reliable? Laza's tone was full of anxiety and helplessness. Albert smiled and patted Raza's shoulder. I've been Osborne's boss for a few years. If I don't even have this ability, how can I still be in New York and in the United States? Raza is still not at ease. I'm just worried about. Don't worry, Albert reassured Laza, don't worry, the person I'm looking for is absolutely reliable. Chapter 82. Is I reliable? Raza pursed her lips, her tone becoming more and more sour. Laza's appearance made Albert cry and laugh a little. Laza, you don't want me to coax you, do you? Raza listened to Albert's words and instantly blushed. No, 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 boss, I didn't mean that. Okay, then you go and get busy first, keep an eye on Tony's side, if he has any trouble, report to me immediately. Yes, boss. Laza, who had something to do, instantly became like a chicken blood, and the whole person became energetic. The clock was ticking. It's past 9 o'clock, which is the time for many people to fall asleep. But Albert wouldn't have gone to bed so early, and it was his prime time to train. In the back garden of the villa, there is a secret underground base, which is where Albert usually trains. He can't always hang over New York every night, and although he is so fast that people don't have time to blink, he is easy to be exposed if he has too many times. 03 So flashing around in midair is not a long-term solution. So, he built a secret base in the back garden of his villa for him to use for training. This secret base is cleverly designed, not only with intricate terrain, but also with plenty of humanoid targets. These targets are all moving at high speeds, which are very suitable for training people's acuity and attack power. Because he can't expose his strength now, he can't find someone who has made a move in the Marvel world and practice with him. At this stage, he can only practice with himself. Either way, change is a good thing. Albert believes that his energy will continue to increase. However, after a training session, he was not very satisfied. Because he can attack quickly, but he can't defend well, after all, his body is a physical body, not steel, and his physical defense is weak in the end. Coming out of the secret base, Albert was never able to get rid of the depression in his heart. His brain is also running at a rapid pace all the time. Now, although he has many energy methods to restore and improve his own energy, what if he encounters a powerful enemy? Without a strong defense system, he can never guarantee the absolute safety of life. Of course, if he really encounters such an enemy, he can choose to retreat or even flee. Didn't Sun Tzu say in The Art of War, 36 strategies, go for the best plan? Albert is not stunned, he knows how to judge the situation, he will not take the egg to touch the stone without his own strength, and he will not fight hard. After all, because of the momentary desire to win and lose, the heroism of sending thousands of miles to people's heads is so stupid that it can't be more stupid. Isn't there another saying that says, stay in the Green Mountains, don't be afraid of no firewood? It's not your opponent now, then I have a next time, a next time, a next time, 1,000 tempers, continuous evolution, and one day I can defeat my opponent. But having said that, anyone knows that it would be great if you could defeat the target in one go, without retreating, let alone dodging. Albert looked down at his body, thinking that if its defenses increased, he would be able to attack more violently without having to worry about defense. While Albert was meditating, a purple light suddenly appeared in front of him, this light, bright and evil. It's the door. The door that didn't exist has reappeared. Albert couldn't hide the excitement in his heart, and he couldn't wait to go to the door, and even his mind was much clearer. If you read a violent novel, go to Novel Network. Standing in front of that door, Albert's whole body was covered in the mysterious purple light. This door, while making Albert excited and joyful, also made him feel complicated. He knew that he had a strong connection to the world outside the door, and this door was the link that connected him and the key to his ability to improve. His abilities are far from being developed, and if they can be fully developed, he doesn't dare to say that Marvel is the first, but when something terrible happens, self-preservation is no problem. Just as Albert was brainstorming, the purple light from the door in front of him suddenly turned into a bright light, and the light was so strong that people had to close their eyes. When I opened my eyes again, the door was gone. But Albert clearly felt that the strength of his body had changed. To test his thoughts, he looked up at the night sky. Sure enough, the distant star is no longer something that only blinks in his eyes, but a bright planet. Yes, he has clairvoyance. These thousands of miles of eyes instantly swept away his depression tonight. He was starting to feel confident again, and everything was going in the direction he wanted. Excited, Albert couldn't sleep at all, and he came to the secret base again. Flying, jumping, attacking, these most basic skills training, he didn't leave any behind. A humanoid target in front of him slammed into it, and Albert swung it with a fist, and the target instantly turned into powder. Not only that, but the remaining energy of this punch rushed straight forward, knocking a hole in the wall in front of him. Albert withdrew his fist, blew, and then looked at the hole in the wall, and couldn't help but pout. He's super powerful now, which is of course a good thing, but if he doesn't control it well, it will also cause a lot of trouble. Looking at the pair of powders on the ground, Albert secretly said to himself, it seems that 423 will have to train more diligently in the future. In the future, I will take half a day off every week, and on Saturday's rest day, I will leave half a day to train, and continue to evolve and improve myself. Making money, training, evolving, and constantly strengthening yourself will become Albert's daily routine in the future. On the other side, Tony is sitting in full swing to grab the vibranium plan. Albert's words could only delay Tony temporarily, but they could not make the ambitious man restrain himself. No, the initiator was already discussing with Rose and the others, and the group spread the map on the table, and the location of Viada on the map was circled with a red pen. Where in Wada is there the greatest possibility of vibranium, where the military defense is the weakest, and where is the most suitable for people to live in? They all investigated it clearly. Now I just want to swallow Viada in one bite. Wada, a self-confident and conceited, pitiful little country, was arranged plainly. Mr. Tony, you said that this Albert told you such an important news that Viada has vibranium, but he himself did not have the slightest idea of asking Viada for vibranium, you say, does he have any conspiracy? Rose's questions and concerns, Tony didn't think about it. However, after thinking about it, he didn't come up with a reason, so he simply didn't want to. Now, getting vibranium is the big thing she wants to think about. Chapter 83. Now that Rose brought it up again, Tony felt more and more that something was wrong. Forget it, whatever his purpose, anyway, Viada is already under our surveillance now. The vibranium of Wada must be ours. Tony's eyes were glazed and he spoke confidently, making no secret of his ambitions. Ross held his chin with one hand, looked at Tony and said, Mr. Tony, did you say that we should send someone to spy on Albert to see if that guy is going to do something? Tony waved his hand, no, I saw him 2 days ago, and he doesn't want to be part of us. That guy isn't interested in vibranium. Tony's words made Rose a little unconvinced. Albert was not such a pure-hearted person. Of course not. Tony denied almost a second, not participating in our plan doesn't mean that Albert is not interested in vibranium and Wada. He has his own plans, I think. Albert's plan was to use Tony to make the way. There is no such thing as a free lunch, and Tony has received important news from him, so he naturally has to pay something to be fair. Albert's eyes were vicious, and Pock's abilities were as he expected, and even a little unexpected. Every link in his plan, everyone involved in the link, did not pull his crotch. And Bach is the biggest help in Wada's link. Boss, there's someone from SHIELD over there. Albert had just turned off his computer screen, ready to make a cup of coffee and enjoy the lazy afternoon. As a result, Raz's words made him lose interest in an instant. Looking at Liza, Albert rubbed his eyebrows and asked, people from SHIELD, Director Nick Fury wants to invite you over for a cup of tea. It's funny. Albert couldn't help but laugh. Lately, I've either invited someone to tea, or someone else has invited me to tea. Drinking tea every day, I will also get tired. Okay boss, I'll just go out and tell him, you're too busy to have time to go over and have tea with their director. Raza said as she turned to leave the office. Liza, wait a minute. Albert called out to Liza, go and tell him that I'm going to be there at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, but I don't drink tea, I drink coffee. Raza. The current Raza is really a bit of a second monk, he is confused, he doesn't know what his boss is thinking, he is obviously very annoyed by the people of SHIELD, but why did he agree to go to the appointment? Boss, my subordinates are stupid, I wonder if you can tell me why you agreed to go to the appointment. Albert put his hand on Raz's shoulder and smiled slightly, Nick Fury has something to ask me, I'll go see how low he can put his posture. Oh I see. Raza patted her head in realization, I see. The boss wanted to see Nick Fury's helpless appearance. Albert pursed his lips and smiled, exactly. Raza said secretly in her heart, the boss's belly is dark, and it is also terrifying. Be careful when you say bad things about me, I can hear you. Albert raised his chin and said lazily. Raza chuckled in her heart, and was a little nervous and incoherent, boss, you. Can you hear me? Albert pressed his eyebrows and said faintly, I can hear you, you say that I have a black belly. This is the little trouble caused by superpowers, being too deaf and clear-sighted, and even occasionally being able to hear the voices of others, although most of the time it is good, but it is inevitable that there will be times when it is not so good. But as soon as he said this, Raza became a little frightened, and in the future, he had to control himself more and reduce his mental activities. Boss, then I'll go out first. Raza felt that he couldn't stay here any longer, and he was afraid that he would accidentally slander something in his stomach and be heard by his boss. Okay, you go get busy. In fact, Albert himself is a little depressed, because he still can't control the skill of listening to other people's hearts, and only occasionally can hear the voices of people whose abilities are below him. If you read a violent novel, go to Novel Network. Too many skills are not a good thing, it is better to concentrate on cultivating 1 or 2 skills, which is a better practice. 5 o'clock. Albert turned off his computer, got up and left the office, heading to SHIELD for an appointment. "Boss, do you just need me to follow you?" Raza asked respectfully as she opened the door to Alberta. "No, I don't." Albert replied lightly, "Just let me go with the 2 of you, Nick Fury won't eat people." "Good." Raza nodded. Even if Nick Fury can eat people, he has the ability to protect his boss. The pure white Maybach drives on a wide, flat road. Sensing that the speed was a little fast, Albert, who was taking a nap with his eyes closed, said lightly, "Laza, you don't have to be so fast, just drive at normal speed." "Good boss." Raza nodded in response. But in less than 2 seconds, he couldn't help but ask the question in his heart, "Boss, we said we would arrive at 5 o'clock, but we didn't leave until 5 o'clock, and now the speed is not fast, will Nick Fury's side?" "It's fine, minor problem." Albert looked nonchalant, "Let him wait, he wants to find me, and I have to go there in person, I am willing to go to the appointment, which is already very face-saving for him. Let him wait for an hour, it's nothing." "That's right." Albert nodded in agreement, "Let's drive slowly, anyway, the boss is not in a hurry, and he, as a subordinate, does not need to be in a hurry." SHIELD. In the reception room. Nick Fury had prepared his steaming coffee and paced around the reception room, but Albert was nowhere to be seen. "This, Lee is good, evil guy hasn't even come to attack." Nick Fury was a little angry, seeing that the originally steaming coffee had cooled, and he felt like he had been teased. "Mr. Nick, Albert is here." When Nick Fury was a little impatient, he finally heard a report from his subordinates, and the expression on his face was not so ugly. And when Albert arrived in the reception room, Nick Fury's whole face changed completely, and he became smiling and enthusiastic. "Mr. Albert, I thought you weren't coming, thank you, thank you." Looking at Nick Fury of the Smiling Tiger, Albert just raised his eyes lightly and said, "Mr. Nick, I came all the way and was a little thirsty, where's my coffee?" "That cup is cold just now, I'll make you another one." Nick Fury is still smiling very friendly. Chapter 84. Albert knew that Nick Fury's courteous actions had a deep purpose behind them. But he didn't take the initiative to ask, and if the other party didn't say, he wouldn't ask, and drink coffee quietly first. Nick Fury sat down across from Albert and sipped his coffee quietly. The two were silent for half a minute. In the end, of course, it was Nick Fury who was the first to break the silence. He didn't beat around the bush either, and got straight to the point. "Mr. Albert, I'm not going to beat around the bush with you, in fact, I invite you here today for the sake of Weta." As expected, Albert didn't have much expression on his face. "Weta thing? It seems that it is your SHIELD redirect, so it's not my turn to interfere." Before Nick Fury could say what he wanted, Albert had already rejected him first. This move preemptively made Nick Fury a little overwhelmed. "Ahem." Nick Fury cleared his throat and said to Albert in a kind voice, "Mr. L, I didn't let you meddle in this matter, I just wanted you to help me persuade Tony." Albert pursed his lips and subconsciously refused, "I'm not good at persuading people to do this kind of thing." Nick Fury had long known that Albert was not so easy to talk and was ready to be rejected, so when he heard this, his heart did not fluctuate too much. "Mr. L, you know, the situation is very bad for Weta. We're all part of the Marvel Universe, and I think you'd like to see international peace too." Nick Fury intends to show affection and reason for Albert. Albert just spread his hands and looked helpless. "I really have more than enough heart and no strength, and I can't help it." "Albert, you don't think that's going to work? We still have some friendship between SHIELD and the military, so if you can help me with this, I'll help you say a few more good words to the military and get them to give you more orders." Albert pursed his lips, feeling a little amused, "But, Mr. Nick, you don't seem to have that much face. In addition, we don't need outsiders to meddle in our Osborne affairs." In a word, Nick Fury's face was blue and white for a while. "I'm done with my coffee, and it's time for me to go." Albert put down the empty cup and got up to leave. Nick Fury didn't keep him either. The people had already made it very clear just now, there was no need for him to be shy and beg in a low voice. As soon as Albert left, Hill ran in and scolded with his neck thrown up, "Dab, this Albert really doesn't know what to do. Give him a chance to owe a favor, he still doesn't appreciate it." Nick Fury's face was also ugly, and he ran into a wall on Albert's side, and he didn't know how to solve Viada's matter now. That small country complains to SHIELD every day, but they have not been able to give a satisfactory response, which will make people criticize and scratch their feet. Got Nick Fury now a head too big. And Albert, he doesn't care how big Nick Fury's head is. They SHIELD can't do it themselves, and they still want to trouble him, but they don't have any doors. In the car. "Boss, I have another question for you." Raza thinks he is a smart man, but in front of Albert, he always feels that his IQ is not enough. "Say." Albert spat out a monosyllable faintly. Raza paused before asking, "What I want to say is, boss, since you don't want Tony to make too much trouble, why don't you cooperate with S.H.I.E.L.D. But I don't want Tony to stop." Albert replied lightly. "Moreover, we Osborne are still working with Tasker, and mixing with Nick Fury is tantamount to openly opposing Tony and Tasker, which is not good for us, and I will not do anything that is not beneficial." Once again, Raza learned. So there's a reason why Albert can become the boss. With this smart brain, what will not succeed? However, he still felt that the few hours of his time today were a bit wasted. The boss can use this precious time to do more useful things. But instead, he chose to go to SHIELD for a cup of coffee. "Boss, is the coffee good?" Leza, who has always been serious, rarely teased Albert. "If you read a violent novel, go to Philo Novel Network." In response to Leza's teasing, Albert responded with a smile, "It's delicious. The next time I have a chance, I'll let you try it too." "Okay, that's looking forward to next time." Raza laughed. Albert was in a good mood today, and when he returned to the villa, he changed into a swimsuit and went for a hearty swim. The more powerful his energy becomes, the slightest carelessness can cause great damage. With a wave of your hand, the pool can set off stormy waves, and with a flick of your finger, you can break the pool apart. In fact, at the beginning, he really didn't control his power at all, and during that time, he was demolishing almost every day. So at that time, he lived by himself, and there was no home-based nanny at all, no driver, and no security guard. Because he was afraid of making some trouble, if someone saw it, his identity would be exposed. It wasn't until later, when he could slowly control his power, that he dared to hire nannies, drivers, and security guards to come in. And his villa is no longer so deserted. After swimming, Albert went to the top floor under the hanging garden, sat on the big sun lounger, drank freshly opened red wine, ate snacks, and watched the stars twinkle in the night sky. At this moment, it is really extremely comfortable. When he was done, he was going to train at the secret base again. But before training, he wanted to go out for a walk. As soon as I walked out of the villa, a woman blocked the door. This woman is none other than Natasha from SHIELD. Seeing Natasha, Albert couldn't help frowning. "Nick Fury asked you to come." Natasha shook her head, "No, I'm here myself." After hearing this, Albert's brow furrowed even deeper. "What are you doing here?" "I have something I want to talk to Mr. Albert," Natasha said with a smile on her lips. "I'm sorry, I'm not interested in talking to you." Albert said as he walked past the woman and was about to leave. Albert. Natasha called out to Albert, I want to talk to you about Viada, about vibranium. Albert paused, but did not turn away, but turned his back to the woman. Seeing Albert stop, the corners of Natasha's lips lifted slightly. How is it, are you interested now? Albert turned around and faced Natasha, his expression becoming serious. I'd like to ask, are you here on behalf of SHIELD, or are you representing yourself? Of course, on behalf of myself. People die for money, birds die for food, I should always seek benefits for myself. Natasha said. Chapter 85. Natasha's appearance makes people feel wrong. Although it is not wrong to say that people should work for their own interests, her identity is too special, so Albert feels that things are not so simple. Albert, don't doubt me, I'm here today for myself. Seeing Albert's skeptical look, Natasha explained with a smile. Then I'm afraid I'm going to disappoint you. I'm not interested in Wada's business, so I don't have anything to talk to you about. After he finished speaking, he continued to stride forward, came to the corner, and flew away with a whoosh. When Natasha caught up, she couldn't even see a figure, and she couldn't help but have a complicated expression. Could this Albert be able to do stealth? Away from his villa, and making sure that he was not being watched, Albert relaxed a little. Regarding the aspect of identity secrecy, he has always done a good job and never let himself be exposed a little. He usually keeps a low profile, and even though he is a god of speeding, he never thinks of using his sonic superpowers. If he uses it, he can go from home to work in a second. But when he usually goes out, he drives and walks normally, and the places he frequents, except for the gymnasium, are restaurants, and he doesn't walk around. Ever since he discovered that eating different foods can speed up evolution, he has become interested in good food. Then he found that food was a great treat for him. Closed on Saturdays. Albert drove out for a ride. He took the secondary road, with few cars and few people, and it was almost unimpeded all the way, not to mention how cool it was. However, in front of a long-haired beauty with convex and backward curls, blonde hair and blue eyes. Oh no, beauty or not is not the point is that she is in the middle of the road, motionless. Touching porcelain? After seeing that the person in front of him was Natasha, Albert understood that this was a fault finder. Natasha was perfectly capable of dodging Albert's car, but she was just there with the pestle, motionless. Albert couldn't do it, so he could only hit the brakes. The wheels slashed across the ground with a sharp sound. What the hell do you want to do? Somewhat angry, Albert got out of the car, slammed the door hard, and came to Natasha. This woman is really haunted. That's not how to find faults. Mr. Albert, you have a day off, could you please have a cup of coffee with you? In the face of Albert's annoyance, Natasha just smiled indifferently, and even smiled slightly, and said to him. Don't be so hostile to me every time, I swear, I didn't come to you with the slightest malice, I really just wanted to talk to you. Natasha came to Albert. It was true that it was not at the behest of SHIELD, but she also had an impure purpose. Based on the evidence she had, she suspected that the man in front of her was from another planet and had superpowers, and she wanted to find out the truth. Meeting and talking directly is the fastest and most useful method. The more you talk, the more loopholes the other party has, and she doesn't believe that she can't find out something. But what a shrewd man Albert was, and he was so careful and cautious in ordinary times. Now, how could it be possible to expose himself in front of a SHIELD person? Miss Natasha, your attitude now is not like the attitude of wanting to have a good conversation with me. The other party found fault first, and there was no need for Albert to be polite to her. Natasha smiled. I'm sorry, my attitude is not rude, but I can't help it, otherwise, I wouldn't be able to stand here today and talk to you properly. However, after the woman apologized, She changed her style and took out a dagger and put it against Albert's neck. The blade was sharp and cold, and in the face of Natasha's pitch-black pupils, Elle already understood what the other party was going to do. I didn't expect to be so careful, but I was still targeted. Natasha's move was to test whether he was a superpower. If you read a violent novel, go to Novel Network. Looking down at the dagger, Albert made a surrender gesture and said, "Miss Natasha, if you have something to say, don't draw your sword if you don't agree." Natasha's eyes were like knives, and she was silent. "Whatever you want, money, fame, status, I have it, I can give it to you." Albert's tone of voice was full of flattery. Natasha looked at Albert's tone and demeanor, and she was completely a shrewd businessman. But when it comes to superpowers, he doesn't seem to be quite like him. For a while, she was also a little confused. 0 for flowers 0. But her confusion only lasted for 2 seconds, and her mind quickly cleared up again. In an extreme crisis, no one will even want their lives in order to hide. Now is the best time to test. Thinking of this, her hand holding the dagger increased her strength, and blood was already oozing out of the man's neck. Albert was terrified, and shouted urgently, Don't, have something to say." The sword couldn't hurt Albert's inside at all, so he had nothing to fear. "Since you want to make a play, then do a full set." Bang! The knife that was originally against Albert's neck was withdrawn by Natasha and turned in a second, slamming it on the ground of the road. When I looked closely, the dagger had been inserted into the concrete road, and only a small hilt could be seen, exposed on the ground. And Albert, looking frightened, touched his neck with palpitations. It's okay, I'm still alive." Immediately reacted, angrily yelling at Natasha, "You are such a crazy woman. I didn't want to do anything, I just played a little joke with you." "Okay, you can go now," Natasha said casually. Listening to the other party's fluttering words, as well as the casual look, Albert burst into a rage. "I almost died just now. This kind of joke is not funny at all, is it? Uschild people don't take other people's lives seriously." Natasha didn't pay any attention to Albert, the disappointment in her eyes was a little hidden. He stooped down and pulled out the dagger that had been inserted into the ground, and walked away without looking back. Natasha's figure had vanished, but Albert searched for it with her energy, and she hadn't left. Sure enough, she still didn't give up. She was betting that Albert was the one she was looking for. However, Albert didn't give Natasha a chance. He got straight into the car, started the engine, and sped away. When Albert's car disappeared at the end of the road, Natasha emerged from the woods. Now she had to believe that Albert was not a superpower. Superpowers are also living people, and in the face of danger to their lives, it is impossible not to resist a little. Chapter 86. An Elle's performance is the performance of an ordinary person from beginning to end, without the slightest superpower. Alas! Natasha sighed softly. Unless the other party's acting skills are superb. But no matter how she thought about it, she didn't feel like the other party was acting. She put a knife to the other party's neck, and he didn't say that he would call the police. This reaction is very much in line with the performance of a businessman or even a wealthy man. In vain, Natasha's mood couldn't be more depressed. But what made her even more depressed was that when she got home, Nick Fury came to her. "Natasha, tell me the truth, what did you do to Albert today?" It turned out that Albert was already in the FBI at this time, and he harshly accused Natasha and Shield, saying that they don't treat people as human beings. He also pleaded with the police officer to call the shots for him. 460 Natasha pouted, "This Albert is still the owner of a big factory, he is so petty." When she put the knife against his neck, his flattering appearance was simply a model in the industry. But she didn't expect that this person would turn around and go to the FBI to complain, which is really boring. "I just wanted to test if he was a superpower." Natasha said lightly. And what about the results of the temptation? It's not. Natasha replied in the affirmative. Okay, then you don't need to observe him, it's really unnecessary to waste time on this person. Good. Hanging up the phone, Nefer was also a little disappointed. SHIELD is now in short supply of helpers, and they spend a lot of money and energy to train agents. But the ability of the highest-ranking agents of SHIELD is less than 1,000th of that of superpowers. If they can recruit superpowers under their command and protect humanity, the daunting task of protecting humanity will no longer be daunting. However, no matter how anxious it is useless. Now Nick Fury can pray for that dangerous day. I hope their superheroes will appear soon, and together with them, they will work together to protect humanity and protect the planet. The other side. In the FBI police station. After taking the note, Albert finally had a smile on his face after sitting in his modified supercar. Nick Fury, you guy, you want to fight me, you're still a little tender. Of course, it's not that Albert doesn't want to protect humans, but if he is a superhero, he will be very tired. Before something terrible happened, he wanted to live the life of an ordinary person and be a happy little millionaire. Because of Natasha, his plan for today's ride was cancelled and he had to be scheduled for next week's rest day. Instead of going to a Manhattan restaurant, Albert went home and told the cook at home to cook it. I have to say that everyone he hired back is capable. For example, the housekeeper who is responsible for purchasing ingredients, what Albert wants to eat, he can buy it back after a few turns. Enjoying food and getting an energy boost at the same time is one of the great joys of life. After eating and drinking, Albert got down to business. Turn on the computer, enter the password, enter the dark web, and you're done. Albert and Pock have an agreed time, so every time Albert enters the dark net, Pock is online. Boss, I've found vibranium. However, Wada sent men to guard it so tightly that not even a single fly could fly in. What Pock said to Albert was just a normal report, and he didn't imply that the task was difficult. Okay, find a way to get it out. Albert paused and continued typing. Tomorrow I'll put half of the money on your card, and then I'll hit the other half later. Good. Poke only replied with a good word and went offline from the site. If you read a violent novel, go to Philo Novel Network. The plan was well underway, and Albert himself was unfazed. It was time to eat, drink, and work, and no one noticed anything strange about him. Frustrated, Natasha was not reconciled, and after continuing to observe Albert for a month, she finally gave up. What a superpower! He is a capitalist who is not a trader or a businessman, and he is still expected to be a hero, and it is almost the same as being a bear. Natasha spit out and left angrily. The days flew by, and 3 months passed in the blink of an eye. On Tony Tasker's side, it's almost to the point where it's ready to fly. But the arrow was not shot for a long time. Even Leza, who was sent to monitor, was a little anxious. Come back and report to Albert, boss, you said they want to rob or not, where is this singing? It's okay, we don't care which they sing, just watch them quietly. 0. Raza scratched her head, okay. Albert looked at Leza, and suddenly smiled and said, Leza, give you 2 days off, how about accompanying me to a place? Boss, are you going to Wada? Raza asked solemnly. Hearing Raza ask, Albert couldn't help but laugh. What are you doing in Wada? Raza couldn't guess what Albert was thinking, so she could only ask directly, Boss, forgive me for being stupid, can you tell me where you are going? Albert didn't sell anything to him anymore, and smiled, go to the Atlantic. Raza looked dazed, what are you doing in the Atlantic? Watching the sea, fishing, diving. Raza was even more confused, boss, why do you suddenly want to go to the sea, fishing, diving, and go to the distant Atlantic? Albert pursed his lips and smiled, I've been a bit stressed lately, and I think it's time to relax and unwind. Has the boss been stressed lately? Why didn't he see it? All right, that's it. Albert made a final decision and said to Liza, you go and arrange it, fly my private jet. Good. Since it was something that the boss had already decided, Raza didn't plan to ask more. Anyway, it's time to travel, so why not? After the matter of going to the Atlantic was raised to 0.4 steps, the rest of the process was swift and smooth. During this time, Albert worked his defensive skills and went diving in the Atlantic, purely to test his own physical defense ability at this stage. Without any precautions, Albert just said a word of flesh and dived directly to the deepest part of the seabed. The water pressure in the depths of the ocean is extremely harsh, but he found that he can breathe in the water. It's just that this ability can only last for 3 hours. When the 3 hours were up, he had to return to the surface. Raza is the only human who knows that Albert has superpowers. There was no need for Albert to hide it from him, after all, there were many things, and he had to ask Raza to help him. What's more, Raza is also a person who has been injected with energy, and he is not in the same team as ordinary people. Chapter 87. Raza has always admired Albert and is Albert's #1 fan. Now I saw Albert diving underwater for 3 hours before he surfaced, and I couldn't help but admire, boss, you are really amazing. I thought you had become a fish. Albert gave Raza a blank look. Okay, let's go, let's eat. The great thing about being in the Atlantic is that you can always eat the freshest seafood meal. As he was gulping down squid, Raza on the other side suddenly exclaimed, boss, look. As he spoke, he handed the phone to Albert, the latest message from his subordinates. Tony Task, who has been inactive for a month, has appeared in Viada. Interesting, really interesting. Albert looked at his phone with interest, and soon after he received the news, the media soon came out to report on it. Now the internet is full of news about Tony's presence in Viada. This Tony, finally can't hold his breath anymore. Raza looked at Albert with a look of good play. Boss, what do we need to do now? Albert picked up the glass of champagne in front of him and took a leisurely sip before speaking. Don't do anything, wait and see. 03 Raza still couldn't help but scold. Tony is too much. What is the difference between his approach and a robber? Albert pursed his lips. He doesn't do these robber things for a day or two, just get used to it. Raza pouted. This kind of thing, how can there be a habit? Albert laughed and said nothing. Maybe the future Tony Tasker will be 100 or 1,000 times more terrible than now. Tony and the rest of the group stayed in Viada for 3 days, and they also negotiated with Viada for 3 days. Originally, Tony could have grabbed it directly, but under pressure from SHIELD and the CIA, he decided to talk about it and try not to conflict. After all, in the future, you will have to mess around in the United States, and it's not good to get into trouble with these organizations. But in fact, Tony Task's so-called good talk is still banditism and unequal treaties. Viada took a big breath and vomited a mouthful of blood, and sold 500 grams of vibranium to Tony for less than the market price. 500 grams, this is already a lot of money. At present, the vibranium excavated by Viada is only about 5 kilograms, and this one will be given to the taxi. Jackson, the director of the Viada Institute of Science, stood opposite Tony, and his heart was bleeding as he gave the vibranium out. In stark contrast to Jackson's gloomy resentment, Tony's face was full of joy. This heavyweight is vibranium in your hand, not to mention how happy you are. The trip to Viada was well worth it. Tony made a deal with Viada, such a big thing. Of course, the media came to report again. Albert swiped the information, looking leisurely. Raza began to get anxious again. Boss, you see Tony has brought back 500 grams of vibranium, and we still only have such a small piece in the laboratory. I know. Albert said lightly, I'm reading the news right now. Then you're not in a hurry. Raza was dying, but Albert was still like a nobody. Albert drank his coffee lightly and did not speak. Raza continued, didn't your spy in Viada say he could bring vibranium back? He couldn't help but start to sour again, and he had been eating that spy's vinegar all this time. Albert couldn't hold back a poof laugh. Raza, you're here again. Pak is far away in Wada, and he won't steal the limelight with you. Raza pouted, I didn't say he was stealing the limelight with me, I was just in a hurry. I'm not in a hurry, what are you anxious about? Albert was always calm. If you want to achieve great things, you have to learn to be calm. Raza nodded earnestly and went about her work. 500 grams of vibranium, Tony only gave a little to the others, and kept the rest for himself. Finally got this rare thing, and Tony, of course, didn't forget to go to Albert to show off. Yo, Mr. Tony is here, what a rarity. If you read a violent novel, go to Novel Network. Seeing Tony Tasker's dusty appearance, he couldn't help but laugh. You just got off the plane? You came to me as soon as you landed, it seems that my status in your heart is still very high. With vibranium, Tony sat across from Albert, more confident than before. Albert, you've never been better than me in your life. Tony Tasker has a victorious attitude. Alban Industries has always been behind Tasker Industries, and now that Tony has vibranium again, that's throwing Albans a few streets away. But Albert only smiled faintly, it's very powerful, and now, the whole world knows that you are a robber. The corners of Tony's mouth twitched, and he snorted coldly, you're jealous of me. The smile on Albert's lips deepened by 2 points, I'm jealous of a robber. You. Tony choked, speechless in anger. Unhurried, Albert continued, Mr. Tony, it's getting late, would you like to come back first? Humph. Tony snorted coldly and walked away. The job of spying on Tony is over, and Albert now has more time to go on the dark web. On Pak's side, he finally gave Albert reassuring news, Boss, wait 2 more days, and I will definitely get you vibranium. Good. 570. Albert smiled with satisfaction, everything was going well, and the next thing he had to do was to keep evolving himself and increase his energy. But in addition to going well, he can't help but sometimes worry that he, a superpower, has appeared early, so Iron Man will soon appear. Who will be Iron Man in the Marvel world? Albert thought about it, and all he could think of was Tony Tasker. Tony, the embodiment of evil. He came back from Viada this time and got vibranium, which means that he will soon get superpowers. When the time comes, the whole of New York, and even the whole of America, and even the whole of Marvel, will be in chaos. At that time, the Marvel Universe entered the first stage it should go through. Naturally, Albert won't interfere with these, and he can't interfere with them, these are all things that this planet should experience. What he could do was to keep refining his cultivation and calmly deal with the danger when it came. And Tony, he has to go through that before he can really grow up. As for whether he can change his mind and be a new man, it depends on his own creation. Anyway, no matter what the outcome of the others is, Albert just needs to know how to go on his own path. He doesn't want much, there is only one, to live in peace in the Marvel Universe. Chapter 88. And Albert's normal performance also made Nick Fury completely believe that he was not a superpower. Natasha is also dead, just an ordinary person, it is really a waste of her time and energy. The spy Pak was very powerful, saying that it would be 2 days and 2 days, and he really got the vibranium back. How can something so important be delivered to the United States? Albert sent Raza to Wada to hand over and bring vibranium back. Raza was very excited, he had long wanted to see with his own eyes what this spy that Albert valued very much looked like. As a result, the other party came with a hat and a mask. Why, don't you dare to show your true face? Raza spoke, with a bit of a yin and yang weirdness. Pak didn't take Leiza's words seriously, he handed them to Leiza, turned and left. Hey, wait a minute. Raza called out to Pak, as if he had something to say. Poke paused, but didn't turn to look at Liza, just asked with a blank face, "Anything else?" Raza said bluntly to Pak, "The boss values you very much. I just want to ask, if the boss asked you to come to New York and help him do something, would you be willing?" Pork turned around and smiled, "I'm helping him right now." Raza repeated, "I'm talking about, going to his side and doing things. I just want to stay in Wada, I don't want to go anywhere else." With that, he strode away. After listening to Pak's words, some of Raza's original worries are now gone. Pak is indeed a rare talent, and if Albert wants to cultivate it, it will be to become a figure on a par with Raza. It's just that people don't want to be here, and the only thing that can interest him is money. While Raza breathed a sigh of relief, she also felt a little regretful. Heroes are sympathetic. 28.3 grams. Connors measured the number no less than 10 times, and then officially reported to Albert the weight of the vibranium he had brought back from Viada. Albert nodded, "Good." Connors pushed the glasses on the bridge of his nose up and sighed, "It's a little less, but it's already very helpful for our research." "Okay, then the research will be left to you, just research, don't put too much pressure on yourself." In fact, Albert doesn't have much hope for the creation of vibranium right now, and it doesn't matter if it can be made or not. He didn't want to put too much pressure on his team, and he didn't want to put too much pressure on himself. However, the pressure from the outside world still came. Raza hurriedly reported, "Boss, Tony Tasker, there's going to be a press conference." Albert nodded, "There is such a big movement, I want to give you an explanation." "So you say, holding a press conference is good or bad for Tasker's stock?" Raza has always adhered to the philosophy of asking if you don't know. "It doesn't matter." Albert shrugged, "Tasker's stock, I've sold it all." Raza cupped her cheeks and continued, "Boss, you have already sold all the stocks?" "It is indeed wise, and it is sold at a high point, although I don't know if it is the highest point." If today's press conference had been good news, Albert's shares could have been sold at a higher price. The key to winning money in stocks is never to sell the highest, because you never know where the highest point is. Blindly pursuing the highest point, they are often educated by the market, and in the end, they are sold at the lowest point, or even trapped and rubbed on the ground. Raza looked like he didn't understand. "I understand, the most important thing in stock trading, you can't be greedy, and the most important thing is to keep the principle. The principle is there, and there is still a chance to start again, but if even the principle is lost, let alone a comeback." Many investors understand this truth, but they just can't do it. Therefore, people often say that stock speculation is 10 speculations and 9 losses, which is not nonsense. Yes, the most taboo word for stock speculation, once the greed is too heavy, it will inevitably leave the market at a loss. If you read a violent novel, go to Philo Novel Network. Albert was able to suppress his greed, so he won a lot of money by trading stocks. Another important point is that he has money, a large enough amount of funds, and it is all spare money. If you use spare money to speculate in stocks, you won't have a little burden in your heart, so it's more rational to win money. Raza pouted, "Boss, we are still different from you, we are retail investors, you are big investors, and retail investors only have the share of leaks that are cut." Albert looked at Raza and said meaningfully, "Knowing that you are a retail investor and easy to be cut leaks, then work hard and make yourself a big family like me." "Good." Raza was beaten again. Then he thought of another point, "Boss, then your shares have been sold off, haven't you thought about buying them back?" Albert pursed his lips and chuckled, "Don't worry about my investment work, I'm ready to buy again, but pick a good place to buy." "Boss, can I learn how to trade stocks with you?" Raza suddenly approached and looked at Albert with a flattering expression. Albert didn't refuse, and said, "It's okay to teach you to speculate in stocks, but you have to do the things at hand first, can you do it?" "Of course it can be done," replied Raza confidently. Albert nodded, Tasker's press conference, when does it start? Tomorrow at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Raza reported earnestly, and then asked, Boss, do you want to participate? Of course. Albert's slender fingers tapped on the table one after the other. This kind of excitement must be made up. Okay, then I'll let Caroline arrange it. Soon it was the day of the press conference. Raza drove Albert and Caroline to the press conference. Niu Zhao Hao. The roads of New York are wide and flat, and the streets are lively and noisy, but Albert is unfazed by the noise, only looking intently at the slabs. At this point, he can already predict that the press conference is bad news, so he has to put up the bid price early and wait for a while to enter the position. Soon, several people arrived at the place where Tasker Industries was going to hold a press conference. There were already media reporters waiting there early in the morning, with voice recorders, cameras, and microphones. As soon as Albert got out of the car, he caught everyone's attention. After all, he was the owner of Osborne Industries, one of the richest people in New York. Mr. Albert, how do you feel about your press conference in Tasker today? Mr. Albert, can I interview you? Mr. Albert. Albert waved his hand, pointed to the venue of Tasker Industries, and smiled. Today, it's their home field. Chapter 89. The press conference will start soon, so let's all pay attention to it. Raza stood in front of Albert and made a way for him. 5 minutes before the start of the press conference, Tony Tasker appeared. Seeing Albert in the crowd, Tony pulled the corners of his mouth and walked over to greet him. Mr. Albert, it's a great honor for me to have you come to my press conference. Albert smiled. How could you miss the press conference of the richest man in New York? What's more, you just came back from Weta and are now a superstar. False praise, false praise. Tony was talking to Albert with polite words, and Jarvis came over to remind, Boss, there's still a minute to go on stage, let's hurry up and get ready. Tony smiled. I go on stage, do I still need to prepare? After speaking, he tidied up his collar and walked on stage calmly. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the press conference began on time. There are quite a few big names here today, and Nick Fury and Natasha are also here. Everyone has a ghost in their hearts. Albert, you're here too? 203 to see Tony's. Nick Fury came to Albert's side and offered to talk. That's right. Albert smiled. I'm friends with Tony, and I'm definitely going to come to his press conference. Are you really friends with Tony? As far as I know, you haven't been to the Tasker conventions and Tony's banquets before, have you? Nick Fury pointed out the truth in one sentence. Natasha was also nearby, still haunted by the unpleasantness she had had with Albert a few times before. I was also thinking in my heart that these people were all old foxes, one more shrewd than the other, and one more hypocritical than the other. Some reporters couldn't hold back and came to Albert with the microphone. Mr. Albert, now that Tasker has vibranium and is stronger, how do you feel? The question was so sharp that both Nick Fury and Natasha gloated and waited to see the show. And Raza, with his hands hanging down at the sides of his thighs, had already clenched into fists. If Albert hadn't stopped him, his hammer-like fist would have swung into the reporter's face. Albert was also unhappy, and now there are more and more such reporters in the media world, deliberately asking some fierce questions to create conflicts and attract attention. But the emotions on Albert's face were completely different from what he thought in his heart, and he smiled. There's definitely been pressure. Tasker has always been ahead of Osborne, and even close behind him is Hammer Industries. We in Osborne still have a long way to go to catch up with these two large factories. But I believe that one day, we will catch up with them. Every one of us at Osborne is confident that that day will come. Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Albert. I still have a question. Stop. The reporter was about to continue asking questions, but was stopped by a Raza. That's all for our boss's answer for the time being. Today's home game is Tasker's, so let's continue to watch the press conference. Although the press conference was going on, Tony had been keeping a close eye on Albert's side, and it was also sad to see reporters interviewing Albert at his press conference. Everyone should already know through the online news that we have brought back a lot of vibranium from Weta, and our follow-up research work will focus more on this vibranium. At this point, Tony paused deliberately, which indicated that what he was going to say next would be even more shocking. Sure enough. So, we're going to reduce Tasker's weapons-making business. As soon as these words came out, the audience was in an uproar. Reduce cooperation with the military, self-reliance, read violent novels, go to Philonovel Network. How many people squeezed their heads just to get a letter of cooperation with the military, ADBB, but Tasker is so good that he even cut back on weapons production. Isn't this self-defeating? But Tony doesn't think so. Wouldn't it be better if he could make a lot of money by himself without being held back by others? To get the business of making weapons, you need to go through many maneuvers before you can get cooperation. But if it's his own business, such as a rare substance in the world, everyone will be shy and rush to come and cooperate with him. Wouldn't that be better? Tony also knew that he was taking a risky move, but he didn't care. He was already worth enough to gamble on a business. What's more, he is 80% sure that he can win. But he has a heart, which does not mean that all shareholders have confidence. Tasker's many collaborations with the military have been a reassurance for the stock market. As long as this cooperation is still there, no matter what happens to the stock market today, whether it rises or falls, it will not affect investors' confidence in Tasker stock. But now, Tony's statement that he wants to reduce the production of weapons by international companies and reduce cooperation with the military is bad news for Tasker stock. Thousands of shareholders panicked. Because the press conference is live broadcast and synchronized with the whole network, shareholders who pay attention to the news can run as soon as possible, without losing money, and even make some money. But those novices who are not sensitive to the news can only be cut leaks. Tony's speech just now has become a classic picture. Thousands of shareholders will never forget that picture. The press scrambled to interview Tony, but he refused to be interviewed and, under the cover of Jarvis, left the venue. It's fun. A smile tugged at Nick Fury's lips, a smile that didn't mean a long time. Albert, on the other hand, was expressionless, but he also had many thoughts and inferences in his heart. Now he can be 100% sure that this is the main universe of Marvel. Nick Fury noticed that Albert was not at all surprised, or delighted, by Tony's words. His face was unwavering, and he couldn't peek into his inner thoughts from his expression. Could it be that Albert really thinks that Tony can rely on that vibranium to become the richest man in the world? If that's the case, then he should be anxious, at least a little uneasy, right? But how did Albert do it? How did he manage to do it without a trace of emotion on his face? Nick Fury is a member of SHIELD, and he doesn't understand business matters, but according to the normal thinking of ordinary people, Albert should have some emotions. But what he didn't know was that Albert was no ordinary person. While Nick Fury was busy thinking, Albert had already taken his men and was ready to leave. Natasha, help me stop him, I want to talk to him. Natasha immediately asked, Chief, who are you asking me to stop? Chapter 90. Albert, help me stop Albert. Nick Fury said hurriedly. Natasha didn't understand. Didn't she say 2 days ago that she didn't need to pay attention to Albert anymore? But strange is strange, the boss's orders, she has always carried out immediately. And just when Albert wanted to do something, Natasha was already in front of him. Excuse me, Mr. Albert, please wait. Natasha smiled politely at Albert, our director wants to talk to you. As he spoke, Nick Fury had already followed. Albert's impression of SHIELD has never been very good. Coupled with the road incident with Natasha last time, he doesn't like the people in SHIELD even more. Mr. Albert, shall we have a talk? Nick Fury, who came to Elba, smiled more politely than Natasha. "Ushield people are really strange. I have no grievances with you, why do you keep coming to me?" Albert had forgotten that this was the first time he had been stopped, so he spoke no politely. "Don't be angry, Mr. Albert, I swear I have no ill will." Nick Fury hurriedly explained. "It's just a little bit of a thing, and I'd like to know you about it. What Natasha did to you that day, I promise it won't happen again." Nick Fury swears. "Moreover, I don't have any weapons on me." Those who were able to enter the press conference venue were searched in advance, so Nick Fury didn't have to prove what he said, and Albert would believe him. But believing does not mean that they cooperate, and Albert has no obligation to cooperate with them. With just one look, Raza understood what Albert meant, and stepped forward and said, "I'm sorry, Mr. Nick Fury, our boss is busy, what's the matter, let's talk about it another day." Nick Fury did not compromise, looked at Albert, and threatened. "Albert, if you don't cooperate and force you to leave, then my men and I will use force. When the time comes, you're going to get the attention of the whole people, but it's going to be suspicious, don't you think?" Albert rolled his eyelids and said lazily, "Let's talk in a different place, it's not a good place to talk." Well, Mr. Albert has chosen a place, quiet and safe. After speaking, he promised again, "Natasha and I will not touch a single hair of you. Now they are short of people in SHIELD, and there is no progress in saving the planet." He just discovered that Albert is a person with strong psychological qualities, which is one of the traits that superheroes should have. Of course, this trait alone does not prove that Albert is the superhero. So Nick Fury needs further proof. Even if there is only a 1 in 10,000 chance, he has to confirm it. It's not for nothing that Albert is being targeted by them. After all, in just a few months, the triple jump of identity was completed. In just 2 or 3 years, he has become a wealthy businessman in New York. The previously lifeless Osborne industry, under his leadership, has been smooth sailing and all the way to Chonghong. There is also an indescribable aura, which is not an ordinary aura, but more like an energy field. Only people with deep internal strength can feel it. Sometimes, though, it can be a delusion. Because I want a superhero too much, it is not impossible that psychological suggestion will give people the illusion. But Nick Fury knows that he won't let go of any possibility, no one who has a chance to be a superhero. In fact, Natasha doesn't approve of Nick Fury's approach, and Albert may be a little different, but he is not just or kind at all. How can such a person be a superhero? But she could only slander this, and she didn't dare to say it in front of Nick Fury. "Raza, find a place." After Nick Fury had said so much, Albert said this lightly to Raza. Raza was next door to the venue and found a private room in a hotel. "Come to the hotel." Nick Fury was a little surprised, but also a little happy. Mr. Albert is planning to have a meal together. It's not. Before Nick Fury could finish speaking, Albert spoke, "I'll give you 10 minutes, if you have anything to say, I'll have a meeting later." "Good." Nick Fury smiled, "That's a long story short." At the press conference, Tony announced that he would be working less with the military, so you should be happy to hear that. Zero begging for flowers. But I may venture to ask, why are you indifferent? Don't you think this is great news for you? Also, the press conference just now was bearish for the stock market. I want to know, have you bought Tasker stock? Nick Fury poured himself a glass of water, and instead of asking the questions he really wanted to ask, he tentatively asked Elba special questions. 3 questions were thrown in a row, but Albert still showed a blank face. On the other hand, Raza on the side looked a little unsightly. This Nick Fury really can't figure it out. He thinks this is their SHIELD territory. What about the interrogators? Although Albert had no waves on his face, he was already thinking in his heart. No wonder this SHIELD can stand, Nick Fury's vicious eyes are really not something anyone can have. The reason why he was targeted was also because of Nick Fury's sharp eyes. If Albert hadn't been so outstanding in these 3 years in New York, Nick Fury wouldn't have set his sights on him. However, he was so good that they had to wonder if he was just a businessman. I've been guarding Osborn for so many years, and I've never seen any strong winds and waves. If I don't even have the ability to be surprised at this point, how can I still be the boss of Osborn Industries? Mr. Nick Fury, do you say yes? Nick Fury threw out such a question, and Albert just stopped back with a few words. Nick Fury continued to ask tentatively. Of Tasker's stock. There is a buy. Albert said honestly. So. Such a big bad news now. I've already sold out, and the good and bad have nothing to do with me. At this time, Raza reminded him, Mr. Nick Fury, there are 3 minutes left. Okay, I have one last question. Nick Fury paused. I want to ask, Mr. Albert, why are you buying Tasker's stock? Albert is a wealthy businessman, and he never buys stocks in a small way, but always in a big way. Isn't buying Tasker stock equivalent to inflating the stock price of the rival company? What's in it for himself? Chapter 91. The tenet that I have always believed in is, do what is good for you, not what is not good for the other person. Tasker's stock is so good, why don't you buy it, even if Tony is my competitor? As long as it allows me to make money and make a lot of money, who do I care whose stock he is? Albert shrugged and said disapprovingly. Albert. Mr. Nick Fury, it's 10 minutes up. Sorry, our boss is going to a meeting. With that, Raza helped Albert to his feet and left the box. Did you hear that? Natasha? He said he had sold Tasker's stock before the press conference. Nick Fury looked in the direction of the box door, thoughtful. Natasha nodded, yes, I heard that, that's what Albert just said. 397. What do you think? Nick Fury asked Natasha what she thought. Natasha frowned slightly, thought for a moment, and seemed to dare not speak. I don't know, I don't think Albert is a simple person, but I can't find a trace of evidence to prove that he is really not simple. Nick Fury pursed his lips and smiled, as long as it's human, it will show clues, and Albert will do the same. But what if he's not human? If Albert is a creature from an alien planet, he has a higher level of intelligence and abilities. So it's really not easy for them to find out what clues. I also think that he may not be a human on our planet, and superpowers have a not simple identity background, so just check it out. According to what Albert just said, the stock was sold before the press conference, and it was almost sold at the highest point. Is it his innate godlike thinking, or is it a superpower that will have such a vicious vision beyond ordinary people? Natasha was a little puzzled by Nick Fury's back and forth. Director, didn't you let me not have to spy on him before? Before was before, now is now. Nick Fury said, don't let go of the slightest possibility, maybe he's really the guy we're looking for. Natasha pouted, I'm just afraid of putting too much energy into him, and it turns out that it doesn't, and then I miss out on the real superpower. You don't have to think about it so much, just do what I say. Nick Fury reiterated again. Okay, Director. Natasha nodded, no more. In the car. There were only Albert and Raza. Raza saw Nick Fury's temptation just now and asked, Boss, are they suspicious of you now? Albert spread his hands, obviously, they do suspect me, suspect that I am a superpower. Raza wrinkled her eyebrows, Boss, are you exposed? Albert pursed his lips, it's not revealing, it's just that Nick Fury's eyes are too vicious, and his agent Natasha is not a fuel-efficient lamp. Isn't it going to be a hassle to be targeted by them? Said Raza worried. Yes, it's going to cause some trouble. But it's not a big deal, they don't have evidence now, and I'm a careful person who won't let them find out. Raza frowned, and suddenly thought of something, and proposed to Albert, Boss, Do you need me to distract them? With a wave of his hand, Albert vetoed Raz's proposal. No, you're my person, I can't distract them, and if I find that you're not normal, they will still suspect me. What then? Raza was still worried. Don't panic. Albert looked calm. They have been investigating for so long before, and they haven't found a reason, and in the future, I won't let them find out anything. Let's spend it slowly, and see who can consume whom. Raza nodded, and the boss said not to worry, then there really is no need to worry. If you read a violent novel, go to Philo Novel Network. Boss, I have one more question for you. Say. Isn't it self-digging that the Tasker industry has been booming and has always relied on military manufacturing, and now that they have reduced their cooperation, isn't it digging their own graves? Why did Tony Tasker do this? Not to mention Raza, the entire American people can't figure out why. Those retail investors who have become leaks because of bad news can't figure out whether this Tony Tasker has been kicked in the brain by a donkey. Actually, Tony's operation, I can understand it. It's good to cooperate with the military, but after all, you still have to rely on others. Tony is a once-in-a-century genius who has repeatedly created world-renowned cutting-edge technology, his epic-making technological products, and has been feeding Tasker ever since. Now with Vibranium, he's confident in himself. As he himself said, there is an 80% chance of winning. There are still 20% uncontrollable factors, and then it is up to fate. But with his current assets and status, even if he loses the bet, it won't have much impact on him. It's a big deal to recreate a Tasker, or say goodbye to business and enjoy life. He has a way out, Cumin can give it a go. As for those stockholders, whether they live or die, Tony never cares. Besides, that's what this market is. Those retail investors, even if they are no longer in Tasker's stock, will inevitably be in other stocks. Albert's words benefited Raza a lot. He is deeply aware that he still has a lot to learn. Luckily, he met a wise boss. Arrived at a fork in the road. Boss, are you going back to the villa or to the Manhattan restaurant? Asked Liza. Let's go to the restaurant, this press conference is a bit long, and I'm hungry. Albert said. Good. At the green light, Raza turned the steering wheel and turned the luxury car into the right lane. Manhattan restaurant. As usual, Law ordered 5 separate dining rooms for Albert. That's right, he eats alone, and he also prefers to be in a separate box. There were too many people in the hall outside, it was too noisy, he was not used to it, and he did not like it. After the waiter had finished serving the meal, Raza retreated to the door of the box, waiting for orders. But Albert called him in. Liza, come in and eat together. Standing by the door frame, Liza poked his head in. Boss, I won't eat it, you eat slowly. Albert was upset. I'll come in and eat when I tell you to come in, where is all this nonsense? How can I finish eating so many dishes? No boss, It's an order. Okay. Unable to resist the hospitality, Raza had no choice but to go in and sit down at the table. Chapter 92. Eat. Seeing Raza sitting at the dining table, but not moving his chopsticks, Albert couldn't help but speak, urging him to pick up the dishes and eat. Okay, then you're welcome. Raza laughed. You're welcome, there are so many dishes, and it's a waste if you can't eat them all. Albert emphasized, and you'll have to help me get rid of them. Good, said Raza and feasted. Having eaten and drunk, Raza sent Albert back to his villa. Albert's villa is cleaned by servants every day, the windows are bright and clean, and there is not a trace of dust on the floor. He took the elevator up to the second floor. Sitting down on the large couch in the living room on the second floor, he felt the remote control, and turned on the TV. Now on TV, almost every channel, the news of Tasker's press conference is broadcast. Almost every reporter and host of the report said that Tony was crazy and couldn't tell the situation. Stocks, is a kind of thing that will be affected by fundamentals and news, both up and down with a bet of 0.3 points, not just by analyzing those red, green, and green columns, you can get the correct answer. Stocks, either up or down. It's like doing a multiple choice question with only A and B options. True or false, with a 50% probability? Of course not. If you want to make a profit, you need to continue to rise, not a certain point of rise. It is very simple to want a certain point to rise, but it is not easy to continue to rise. So, unless you encounter a daily limit. Otherwise, you can only hold the stock for the rest of your life. And when you hold a stock all the time, it's easy to get trapped. Because you don't know when the bad news will come. Today's press conference was a bombshell for Tasker's stock, blowing up the stock market. Albert opened the stock software, and sure enough, it was all green. Tasker's stock almost fell today, but fortunately it did not fall to the limit, giving many investors a chance to escape. But there are also many new leaks that are reluctant to run, so they hold them tightly and wait for them to rise one day before selling them. People have a loss aversion, and they must make a profit before they come out, and the result is that they are getting more and more trapped. There are even some people who hold the stock and hold it, not waiting for the stock to rise again, but waiting for it to be delisted. Here at Tasker, though, these loss-averse ones are likely to be the winners. While everyone was selling stocks like crazy, Albert had the money ready and waited for the time to buy again. All they saw was that Tasker had reduced his cooperation with the military. But what they don't know is that later Tony will announce that Tasker Industries will switch to energy-based companies. Of course, this is good news, and since it is good news, then the stock will go up at that time. Of course, Albert had to buy it early. Not now, though. The stock market is still unstable and uncertain, and maybe there is a better place to buy. Albert is not in a hurry, what he has is patience. Being patient doesn't mean waiting. Albert is never a passive person, he must take the initiative to do something to induce that opportunity to come sooner. While Shield was keeping a close eye on Albert, Albert was keeping a close eye on Tony Tasker. It is easier for superpowers to discover the existence of other superpowers. Now Tony still relies on Albert's help to nourish his body. In fact, Tony has long wanted to break through this layer of shackles. The time to break through the shackles is the best time for Albert. Albert knew that he wouldn't have to wait too long, he just had to do what he was doing. If you read a violent novel, go to Novel Network. In Albert's head, there were many speculations and ideas. But his plan was to take it slowly, one step at a time. If he didn't have the possibility of becoming the superhero of this world, if he didn't have a mission to save humanity, then he wouldn't need to make elaborate plans. But he may become a superhero in the Marvel Universe, and since he is a superpower, he has the obligation to save mankind. Then, everything has to be carefully planned to make sure that every step is right. His plan is not complicated: first, to accumulate assets, and second, to accelerate evolution. The premise of accelerated evolution is the accumulation of assets. As it turned out, evolution really burned money, and on Weta alone, he spent nearly $400 million. However, the saying "money can make the devil grind" is really true. The rare treasure vibranium in the laboratory, after all, was bought with money. Including Tony Task, he also bought vibranium with money, but the robber bought more vibranium with less money. The other side. Tony Tasker has also returned to his quarters. Over the years, Tony has bought a lot of estates, all of which are changed to live in. If you are happy today, you will live in this manner, and if you are not happy tomorrow, you will go to live in that manner. Those who really can't live in it will be rented out and will receive a large amount of rent every year. It's a lot of money, so people are very confident in saying those things at today's press conference. Jarvis, help me find out what Albert has been up to lately. As soon as he returned to the Manor's studio, Tony instructed Jarvis. Tony felt that Albert was a little strange, vibranium was such a rare thing, he couldn't be rare. But his eldest 567 had brought vibranium back from Viada, and everyone else was vying to get a point, but this Albert didn't do it. There's vibranium in Albert's lab, and this Tony knows it. But he also knows that a little vibranium, to use the most popular analogy, if it can be eaten, is not enough to stuff the teeth. So, what the hell is this Albert doing? Seeing Tasker Industries getting bigger and bigger, and getting farther and farther away from their Osborne, as the boss of Osborne, won't he panic? When Tony Tasker doesn't know what his opponent thinks, he will have a little uneasiness, and this slightest uneasiness is enough to make him uncomfortable. He's a man who is used to being in control, so he has to ask Jarvis to find out for himself, and even if he can't find out what Albert's plan is, he needs to know what the other party is doing. Okay, boss. Jarvis earnestly agreed, and walked straight out of the studio. Tony didn't believe that Albert was such a man who was willing to fall behind. However, after many investigations, Jarvis, who was sent out, brought back only information. Albert worked diligently every day, and when he was in a good mood, he would go to a Manhattan restaurant for a big meal. His itinerary is almost, home and company 2 points and 1 line, or home, company, Manhattan restaurant 3 points and 1 line. Chapter 93. Hey, Manhattan restaurant. Tony Tasker listened to Jarvis's report and couldn't help but be interested in this Manhattan restaurant. Albert only goes to Manhattan restaurants to eat. Jarvis nodded and said, yes, if Albert goes out to eat, he only goes to the Manhattan restaurant. If you don't go out, you'll be the cook at home. Tony Tasker frowned slightly, holding his chin with one hand, as if he was a little puzzled. Boss, do you want to keep watching? Seeing that Tony Tasker didn't speak again, Jarvis took the initiative to ask. Tony Tasker waved his hand and said, no need to monitor, 2 points and 1 line, 3 points and 1 line, there is nothing to monitor. Jarvis scratched his head, boss, what are we going to do now? It's time for dinner, go eat. Go to dinner. Oh good, boss, where would you like to eat? Manhattan restaurant. Tony Tasker blurted out. While Tony Tasker is spying on Albert, Albert's side is also spying on Tony Tasker. Tony went to the Manhattan restaurant and had dinner. Raza returns and reports the news to Albert. Hearing the news, Albert smiled playfully, he has become a stalker, paying so much attention to me, and going to a Manhattan restaurant in person. Boss, are you going to Manhattan now, or are you going to eat at home? Asked Liza. Just eat at home. Albert replied. After eating, Albert's inner energy field seemed to be stimulated, and he didn't want to sit and watch the news or other quiet activities now. He wants to do some intense exercise now. So what should we do? After a moment's thought, he thought of a stimulating exercise. Drag racing. In the evening, at sunset, it would be a cool thing to drive a multi-million-dollar luxury car on the highway of New York. As soon as he said he would do it, Albert immediately went to the garage to pick up the car. Among the many luxury cars, he chose the Maybach that he had personally modified and drove on the wide and flat highway. Usually when he sits in a car, he always has a driver, but in fact, Albert is very good at driving, and drag racing is not a problem at all. It's not that there are no other cars on the highway, but Albert always dodges perfectly and gets through. The Maybach seemed to have a life, seeing the seams and needles, flying eaves and walls, crisp and neat, and the owner of the car next to him was dumbfounded. Racing on the highway. Once again, Tony was shocked that this Albert was very laid back. Jarvis, what the hell is that Albert guy thinking? Tony asked Jarvis. Jarvis shook his head, I don't know. How could he possibly know? He's not the roundworm in Albert's stomach. Forget it, no matter what he is, with that kung fu, I might as well do a few more research. Tony said, turning back to his lab. Boss, there's good news from Dr. Connors. Albert wanted to race a few more laps, and when he heard the news from Liza, he just wanted to go back to the Star Lab and see for himself how the experiment went. Okay, I'll go to the lab right now. With that, Albert turned around and drove in the direction of the Star Laboratory. Connors, as always, stayed in the lab on Saturdays and days off to concentrate on his experiments. He has made it his mission to develop a substance like vibranium. So in fact, when he stayed up late to do experiments, he was not sleepy at all, but full of fighting spirit. No, the experiment has finally made new progress. Dr. Connors, it's got to be you. Albert walked over and excitedly patted Connors on the shoulder. Although it is only a small progress, it is a big step forward for the entire vibranium experimental research. I'll do the next experiment with you. Seeing the progress, Albert was also excited, and he couldn't sleep at all, and studying with Connors was his best choice. Albert did what he said he would, and sure enough, he spent more than a week in the lab. During the week, he certainly didn't forget to keep an eye on Tasker's stock. The day after the press conference, Tasker's stock plummeted, and by now it was down almost 30%. The scariest thing is that people don't know that this may not be the lowest point. It can be described as falling endlessly. Almost overnight, the huge Tasker lost nearly 30% of its market capitalization, which is truly terrifying. Few of the investors who bought Tasker stock, except for Albert, made money. The news broadcast on the internet also said that Tony Tasker was stupid and wanted to ruin Tasker Industries. If you read a violent novel, go to Philo Novel Network. Not only the media, but also ordinary people, especially the leaks who bought Tasker stock, have spoken out against Tasker Industries and Tony. Just because of a press conference, just because of a self-righteous decision, it led to a lot of scolding. Boss, you said that Tony Tasker will not regret doing this. Raza couldn't figure it out like everyone else, but it didn't matter. If you didn't understand it, just ask the boss Albert. What is there to regret? Albert said lightly, Tony is Tony, not anyone else, and he would never do anything he regretted. Even if you find out that it is wrong later, won't you regret it? Raza asked. Yes. Albert replied categorically. Tony Tasker has a cost of trial and error, so he's headstrong. It's all other people's business, so we don't have to worry about it, just do our best. Yes, boss. In fact, Tasker has reduced cooperation with the military, and the biggest beneficiaries are Osborne Industries, as well as large industries such as Hammer Industries, which compete with Tasker. But Albert was not happy. Tony did not need the help of the military, indicating that he was getting stronger and stronger. Tony's words are getting stronger and stronger. Does it mean that the Steel, Qian Li Zhao, hero is about to appear? Albert is not afraid of the appearance of Iron Man, he is afraid of Iron Man appearing too soon or because the current self is not strong enough, he may not even be able to protect himself, let alone protect the human beings on the whole planet. Now under his command, the only generals he can use are Raza and Connors, and in order to defeat Iron Man, he has to continue to recruit talents. The power of one person is limited, but the power of a group of people is unlimited. Back at home, Albert continued to cultivate and evolve. While developing a vibranium counterpart, Albert also gave Connors an important task, to build a warplane. Connors confidently agreed, claiming that he would only need to give him 10 days. 10 days later, the fighter plane must appear in front of Albert. Connors named the fighter plane that was about to be built, and it was called Kunpeng 1. He never disappointed Albert, and 10 days later, he really built the Kunpeng fighter. Chapter 94. The fighter was built, and the next step was the test flight phase. Eager to try, Raza introduced herself to Albert Mao. Boss, leave the task of test flight to me. Albert had always believed in Liza, and seeing that he was so positive, of course he did not refuse, and gave him this task. Thank you, boss. Raza was very happy, changed into equipment, and sat in the driver's seat of the Kunpeng No. 1. The test flight was a success, the fighter was comfortable to sit on, and it was very smooth to fly. Raza didn't want to come down in a car, and if it wasn't for Albert's order, he could have been flying in the sky for a day. Reluctantly getting off the plane, Raza was still a little unsatisfied. "Boss, this fighter is so good, do you want to go up and sit down? I'll be the pilot." Raza obviously wanted to take this opportunity to sit on the Kunpeng No. 1 and walk around a few more laps. Albert saw Raza's thoughts, nodded and smiled, "Okay, I'll try it too." So Albert sat in the back seat, Raza sat in the driver's seat, and the two had another pleasant flight. However, at this time, Tony Tasker's side already knew about the existence of Kunpeng No. 1. When Jarvis reported the news to Tony, Tony couldn't help frowning, and built a plane 257. Tony Tasker became more and more puzzled by what this Albert was up to. Jarvis thought for a while and said, "It should be for the military, they built it, test it in advance and see how the quality is." Tony felt that things were not so simple. "This Albert is very scheming, you continue to help me keep an eye on it, and report me in time if there is any trouble." "Good boss." These days, Albert is already thinking about letting Connors build the Kunpeng 2. But seeing that he was too tired and hard during this time, he still didn't bring it up immediately, waiting for next month. In addition, he had another plan in mind at this time, and if it succeeded, this plan would catch Tony Task off guard. Since Tony likes to spy on his whereabouts so much, he gives Tony a big surprise. With this in mind, he once again opened the familiar stock software. The stock market in the past few days has been pretty good, and many stocks have risen. However, Tasker's stock is still bleak, and it can even be said that it is a little green in the red. Albert's heart fluttered, a dag, and with a tap of his finger, he added to his position again. After adding this position, he also put up a lower price to see if he could wait for a better buying point. If he could buy it all, he would have bought nearly $5 billion in Tasker stock. With these shares, Albert can have a good talk with Tony Tasker when the time comes. Oh my god! Tasker's stock has dropped by almost 40 points, and if it goes down again, it will be cut in half. Raza came in with the papers, saw Albert looking at the stocks, and gossiped over to take a look. As a result, I saw that Tasker's stock was still falling, and I couldn't help but scream. Albert looked back, glanced at the gossipy Raza, and asked him, "Did you enter?" Raza shook his head, "I'd better forget it, just that little money, it's not enough to eat fried snails, let alone stock trading." Albert smiled and continued to look at his stock. He has a unique view of the stock market, a vicious eye, and there are many good votes in the stock market, but Albert only bought Tasker stock. Why does he have a soft spot for Tasker? Of course, there is a reason for this. "Boss, the annual charity evening in New York is coming, do you want to attend?" As she spoke, Raza took out an invitation and put it in front of Albert, asking him if he wanted to attend. In fact, he asked symbolically that the boss would not attend the charity evening in previous years, so he felt that the boss would not attend this year's charity evening. But unexpectedly, Albert actually picked up the invitation, looked at it carefully for a while, and said, "Go." "Well?" Raza suspected that he had misheard. What did the boss say? Did he say he was going to a charity party? Impossible, right? "Boss, you're going to participate?" Raza asked again in disbelief. "Why, can't I go to the event?" Albert asked Raza rhetorically. "Yes, you can." Raza felt confused, but what the boss said was what it was. It's good that the boss is willing to go to the charity evening this year, and he can also follow him to meet the world. So that's the benefit of being a big-name assistant. Albert knew that Tony would definitely go to the charity evening, and he was most enthusiastic about this kind of banquet and party. You can take advantage of the opportunity of business communication to have fun. Albert had always known that Tony had a sassy side. As for Albert himself, he just wanted to tell Tony important news at the evening. "Boss, what important news do you want to tell Tony Tasker?" Liza's curiosity was piqued by Albert's words. "You'll know when the time comes." Albert and Raza sold off. "If you read a violent novel, go to Philo Novel Network." "Boss, you're still selling it to me." Raza pouted because of Albert, his heart was tickled. Albert smiled, "I can't tell you yet, go make me a cup of coffee." "Okay." Raza laughed a little and went to make Albert coffee. New York's charity evening was held as scheduled, and it was not so much a charity evening as it was a gathering of the upper class, an exchange meeting for business bigwigs. Albert rarely attends such occasions, and he would not have bothered to come if it weren't for the news to Tony Tasker. So, in fact, he was a little lacking in interest. Raza, on the other hand, was excited because he hadn't been to a banquet for a long time. This is the ball of the rich. There are rich sons who are suave, handsome, and dashing, and dressed in expensive suits, and there are also young and beautiful, sexy, and charming rich ladies in low skirts. Albert and Raza stayed in the corner, just not wanting to attract attention. Tony Tasker has always been high profile, and this time he also made a high profile appearance, and as soon as he appeared at the venue, he attracted everyone's attention. "Tony Tasker is here!" someone whispered. The celebrities couldn't hold back their excitement and exclaimed, "Tony is so handsome!" Raza stood beside Albert, a little unconvinced. "Boss, I think you are much more handsome than Tony." Albert just smiled faintly, "I don't compare this with him, and my existence is not to make those women like. It's too superficial to be high profile in order to attract the opposite sex." Chapter 95. Albert is not a superficial person. Tony Tasker is mingling with a group of handsome men and women, chatting and laughing. As soon as Albert stepped out of the corner, he was also targeted. Many business tycoons came to greet him and toast. Albert echoed absent-mindedly, his attention on Tony Tasker's side the whole time. Albert wanted to talk to Tony Tasker, he wanted to know how much the other party knew about him, and he also wanted to know more about the other party's dynamics so that he could plan what happened next. However, he was restrained by these business tycoons, lowered his head and drank half a glass of red wine, and when he looked up again, Tony was no longer visible. So Albert had to go to Rose first and ask Tony about it. But this Rose is very cautious and his mouth is very tight, and it is in vain for Albert to try to get something out of his mouth. The two chatted about some painless topics, and they both laughed perfunctorily. At this time, Tony Tasker reappeared in the crowd. Albert's dark eyes flashed, and he seized the opportunity to come to Tony's side. "Mr. Tony, a toast." Albert raised his glass, ready to clink glasses with Tony. With a polite smile on his face, Tony Tasker raised his glass and clinked glasses with Albert. "Chess. Let's talk somewhere else." Albert pointed to a spot in the corner and spoke to Albert. Albert nodded, but said, "I'm so handsome, everywhere I go, it's a big deal." As soon as the words fell, a beautiful woman came over to say, "Hello, Tony, we have a drinking party tomorrow, will you go?" Tony waved his hand, "I've been drinking a lot tonight, and I can't afford to drink again tomorrow night." After hearing this, the beautiful woman couldn't help but laugh out loud. "Tony, you're laughing again, who in our circle doesn't know that you are not drunk with 1,000 cups?" Tony glanced at the beautiful woman and said, "Next time, next time, next time, next time." The beauty didn't dwell too much, said, "I must come next time," and left to talk to other handsome guys and beauties. "Well, this is not bad, right? Would you like to introduce you to each other?" Tony looked at the bewitching back of the beautiful woman just now and teased Albert. "No, no, no." Albert repeatedly refused, "You don't need to introduce me, I'm not interested in beautiful women, only money." Tony Tasker sneered, "Also, you're only interested in making money, I forgot, when you reach your position, what kind of beauties do you want, where do you need me to introduce them? Albert shook the scarlet liquid in his cup and said, we're not going to talk about beautiful women today, I want to talk to you about money. Okay, listen up. As soon as he entered the venue today, Tony Tasker noticed that Albert's eyes had been on him, and he had long wondered what this guy was thinking and what he wanted to do. Say it. Tony Tasker looked at Albert with interest, wanting to see what could come out of his mouth. Albert paused before speaking unhurriedly. Recently, Tasker's stock has fallen again, and I have increased my position a lot. Tony Tasker's eyes moved slightly, staring straight at Albert. What do you want to say? You want to tell me that you are very supportive of us, Tasker? Albert pursed his lips and smiled. Yes, support is definitely support. Do you want to know how much my position is? Tony Tasker glanced at Albert with some disdain. He thought that this guy had a position of a few $100 million at most. Unexpectedly, Albert said to him, Mr. Tony, I bought $5 billion in Tasker stock. What, $5 billion? Hearing this, Tony Tasker's eyes widened like brass bells. You guy, why do you buy so much? Albert drank the little wine left in his glass before he said unhurriedly, of course, I want to be on your Tasker Industries board. Humph! Tony Tasker snorted coldly, don't let you buy so many shares in the future, and we in Tasker's board of directors will have a say. Albert smiled, I don't have the right to speak, but I always have the right to listen. The corners of Tony Tasker's mouth twitched. Albert, what the hell do you have in mind? Albert shrugged his shoulders and said in a light tone, I don't have any intentions, I just want to be on the boardroom. Zero for flowers, zero. Tony Tasker listened, his hands hanging on either side of his thighs clenched into fists. You wait, tomorrow I'll take 10 billion and go buy your Osborne stock. Okay, I can't ask for it. Albert smiled slyly. Tony bought Osborne's stock, even if he had the qualification to audit, it was useless, it was just to help Osborne Industries raise the stock price and help his competitors. But Albert bought Tasker's stock differently, and he also made a lot of money with this stock. Tony Tasker stared at Albert coldly, his tone as cold as his eyes. Albert, how did you accurately grasp the buying and selling points of Tasker stock? Do you know the inside information? Who did you buy inside Tasker? Albert shrugged, spread his hands, and said innocently, who do you think I can buy off inside you? Tony lowered his eyes. In fact, there was no inside information to reveal, he was very cautious, and the extremely important things were done by himself, even Jarvis didn't know. So, Albert had absolutely no inside information. Could it be that this kid is really a god? Why, don't you believe I'm a stock god? Albert looked at Tony Tasker and smiled playfully. Tony Tasker didn't continue the conversation, but he was still struggling with the question that went earlier, why do you have to come to our board of directors to sit in? Albert said seriously, of course, I want to know more about you, Tasker, after all, I have a $5 billion position now, so I should pay more attention to the next move. Tony Tasker wouldn't believe Albert's nonsense, and he mocked, don't pretend here, don't think I don't know, you're very scheming. Where, I obviously don't have any intentions. Albert explained. But Tony Tasker was already enraged, Albert, you're provoking me. You wait, I have a way to cure you. We'll see. Albert gladly accepted the war letter, okay, let's wait and see. The evening is not over yet, and Tony Tasker has already left first, which is a rare phenomenon. Chapter 96. Boss, was he mad at you? Raza looked at Tony Tasker's back in the distance, a little unclear. Just now, the boss was in the corner with Tony, and he didn't know what the plot was, so now he was in a daze. Albert smiled meaningfully and asked Liza, want to know what I told Tony? Of course I want to, boss, tell me quickly, otherwise I'll be itching in my heart. Albert handed the glass to Raza and ordered, then go and pour me a glass of champagne first. Okay, boss. Raza took the glass and ran to pour it with a smile. Albert drank the glass of cold champagne in one gulp and told Raza what had just happened. Just now, I told Tony that I bought 5 billion of their Tasker shares. Worthy of the boss, Trench. 007 a stock, you can casually throw 5 billion into it, and the whole of New York, his boss is the most courageous. But, Raza was a little puzzled, boss, isn't it a good thing that you buy so many of his shares? Why is he throwing your face? He just doesn't know what to do. Albert pursed his lips. Do you know what rights a shareholder has if he holds a large share of stock? Raza, if you hold a large enough share of a company's stock, then that person is eligible to sit on the board. Raza seems to have suddenly realized. Boss, it turns out that you don't mean to drink because you're a drunkard. For Albert, he didn't care about the little money he made from trading stocks. He never made money for the sake of making money, but for the sake of his mission. Heaven gave him the status of a superpower, not for him to waste. He knows what he has to do and what he has to do. Albert smiled slightly. It's good to be an observer. I want to hear about their new plans and directions for Tasker. Raza couldn't help but cover her mouth and laugh. Boss, you're so shrewd. Actually, what he wants to say is that the boss is really cunning. Albert smiled and patted Raza on the shoulder. Then learn more from your boss. Raza nodded repeatedly. As a shareholder with a large share of Tasker shares, Albert actually has a lot of rights. In addition to the above-mentioned access to the board of directors, he has another right. That's some of the public places where you can go in and out of Tasker freely. Because of a decision made by Tony Tasker at the press conference, Tasker is still in turmoil. And his family's stock is also in turmoil, and there is never a clear situation. During this time, Tony and the board of directors have been working hard to stabilize Tasker's stock. These guys are quite capable. The next day, when Albert opened the stock software again, he found that Tasker's stock had stopped falling. It has turned red. Although it has only risen by less than 1 percentage point, it is still red. A smile tugged at Albert's lips, but fortunately, he took the bottom and rebuy. For the rest of the day, he just needs to wait for the stock to go up, and that's it. Morning. In the New York Daily News, there was a big news. Tasker Industries is ready to switch to new energy. Turn on the TV, and the online report is even more convincing, as a video of Tony's speech is also attached. After so many years of operation and improvement, our business in Tasker has become very systematic. Now I plan to switch to new energy and make more contributions to mankind. As soon as this news came out, the people of New York had something to talk about after dinner. And those old and new leaks who reluctantly sold Tasker stocks are so regretful that their thighs are going to be bruised at this time. Why not insist on it? Why not trust Tasker Industries? Such a large enterprise will definitely have the ability to turn things around. Albert woke up at 7 in the morning and wanted to have breakfast at 7:30. He also saw the news of Tasker's switch to new energy for the first time. I couldn't help but smile slightly. Everything was under control. Albert eats more often now, breakfast, lunch, evening meals, and a late-night snack before bed. Tasker's switch to new energy is shocking news for the people of New York. For Albert, it was just to be expected. After opening the stock software and looking at his position, he thought to himself, he can make a lot of money again. Although he can make a lot of money running his Osborne industry, he prefers to buy competitors' stocks and make money from competitors. That kind of joy is incomparable. If you read a violent novel, go to Novel Network. According to the information from the inquiry, Albert knew that Tony Tasker's reduction in cooperation with the military was not only because he wanted to switch to new energy. There is also a very important reason, that is, he himself needs to make military equipment. What kind of military equipment needs to consume so many parts and resources that it is necessary to reduce cooperation with the military? There's only one thing Albert can think of, and that's that Tony wants to make a steel armor. Knowing that Tony Tasker had this intention, then everything he did during this period was not worth surprising. Although this is only the beginning, Albert is already feeling a deep sense of crisis. The power of the Iron Man armor is unimaginable, and the destructive power it causes is immeasurable. Comparing the most advanced fighter jets with it is nothing in comparison. If it is continuously improved and updated in the future, the destructive power it causes will be impossible for the most advanced human technology to compete with. With such a powerful force, it is difficult not to be swallowed by it and blackened. That's what Albert fears the most. Once Tony Tasker blackens and becomes a big villain, then it's a big problem. Albert was eating breakfast while thinking, and when 1.0 finished breakfast, he called Liza, explained something, and took his cloak and went out. Albert's red cloak is no ordinary cloak. This cloak of his, which is combative, belongs to his cloak of Albert. After putting on the cloak, Albert's whole body was tightly covered, revealing only a pair of eyes. He decided to go to Weta to see it for himself. After all, that's where Tony Tasker himself been, and Albert will see if he can be there and find anything useful. There's a lot he has to do to stop Tony Tasker from blackening. So Albert used his speed, the speed of 400 sounds, and in less than an hour he reached Weta. Although Weta is a small country, it relies on scarce resources such as vibranium, and lives a very chic life. Chapter 97. There are a lot of rare resources on Weta's side, but there are not many military manufacturing sites. Because although this small country has a lot of raw materials, the conditions for manufacturing military equipment are limited, and the raw materials can only be exported to other countries. Tony Tasker took a fancy to this and traveled all the way to make a deal with Viada. Seeing that the people were living in abundance, and the faces of the people were beaming, the worry in Albert's heart deepened. How long can such a happy and prosperous life last? He was afraid that the devastating danger would come without warning, and he was afraid that he would not be able to save so many people. Therefore, it is time to stifle the signs of danger in the cradle. In his previous life, Albert admired those superheroes, and at the same time hoped that one day, he could become a superhero and fulfill his dream of being a hero. But now, when he really became a superpower, he found that heroes are not so easy to be. But since the mission has fallen to him, since fate wants him to be a hero, he has to do his best to save the people. Although, superheroes are not obligated to save sentient beings. 03 After walking around Weta, Albert felt more and more that the country was rich. But it seems that it is because of the abundance of resources that they are a little reluctant to forge ahead. That's not going to work. Albert muttered to himself. As a superpower, he tried his best to help everyone in need. However, if the person in need of help is rotten, it will not work. After a few more turns, Albert's brow furrowed deeper and deeper. What should I do? Albert also asks himself from time to time. He is a strong man, but it does not mean that he is invincible and can overcome all difficulties. When he returned from Viada, Albert didn't go home immediately, thinking that since he had gone out in this costume, he would go and do something again. With that in mind, he flew to Tony Tasker's estate. Tony Tasker's manor, heavily guarded. Albert looked at it, and used his stealth skills from time to time. Then, take it easy and observe Tony Tasker's every move. Then he discovered something that shocked him. Dressed in black armor, Tony Tasker is fighting a robot. Obviously, that robot was also made by Tony, and its combat effectiveness is not weak, in order to be a sparring partner for him. Good guy. Albert couldn't help but sigh. Tony even made a robot out to be a sparring partner for him. Sure enough, being rich is capricious. Albert thinks he is also a rich man, but his little assets are still far from Tony's. This robot is not very good, and it is a little sluggish. Albert propped his chin and commented to himself. But he also saw that this robot is still very powerful, but the endurance is not very good. It didn't take long to fight, and it couldn't hold on. Tony Tasker was also a little annoyed, pointed at the robot and said, "You're really useless, I just started warming up, you can't do it." Tony's angry appearance made Albert watch with relish. He just likes to see Tony Tasker unhappy. If Tony isn't happy, he's happy. It's a pity that he came in a hurry and didn't bring anything. At this time, if you have a bag of melon seeds in your hand, it is comfortable enough to watch the play while eating melon seeds. The robots are out of war, and Tony Tasker can only fight on his own. Although Tony Tasker is inexperienced, if Albert were to go up to fight him now, he might not be able to fight. Because, although Tony Tasker is not very strong in his own combat power, his equipment is very strong. The combat effectiveness of technology is amazing, and with this mecha and the weapon in his hand, Tony can also be in danger. Just as Tony Tasker retrieved his weapon and prepared to go back to the house to rest, Jarvis frowned and came over to tell Tony, "Boss, it has detected that there is a life target within a radius of 10 miles, and it does not belong to any one of our manors." Hearing this, Albert, who was invisible, chuckled in his heart. Tony Tasker's handsome face also froze. "What are you eating? Find him out for me. This place is not to stay for long." Albert hurriedly activated his super speed power and flew back to the villa. Back at the villa, he changed his cloak, put on a neat suit, and instructed the driver to leave for the company. As soon as he got back to the office, Raza came in. "Boss, you're back. I'm going to call the police if I don't see you again." Albert looked up and gave Raza a blank look. "You don't believe in my abilities so much, how can I be okay?" Raza made Albert a cup of hot tea and breathed a sigh of relief. "Aren't I worried about you?" Albert said casually, "I see the excitement going." "Look, what's the excitement?" "Boss, tell me about it." The gossip factor in Laza's body was activated again. Albert didn't want to hide it from Laza, and told him everything about it. After hearing this, Raza couldn't help but admire. "I have to say, Tony is really a genius. Unfortunately, he seems to have chosen the wrong path. Alas! If you read a violent novel, you can go to Philo Novel Network." Albert sighed softly. He also felt that Tony Tasker had chosen the wrong path. With Tony's genius 120 minds, if he had a righteous heart, then Albert would have less worry about the future. "Boss, have you been discovered by them?" Raza suddenly thought of this important question. Because he always knew that Tony Tasker's manor was heavily guarded, and the technology was very powerful, and any living matter would be detected. "I almost got caught." Albert pouted. "It's good that I have the ability to speed. It seems that this Tony can't be underestimated." That's good, luckily." Raza patted her chest, relieved. In the manner of Tony Task, Tony is still thinking about the purpose of life just now. He felt that he had really raised a bunch of rice buckets. None of them are useful at critical moments. Jarvis stood silently with his head down, not daring to speak, not even to breathe loudly. The others even stared with bated breath, silent, and did not dare to come out, for fear that the boss would be unhappy and punish them. "Let's take a look at the detection system. The information just detected is still in the system. I want you to find out the identity of that creature." Tony Tasker gave the order to die, and although everyone knew that this task could not be completed, they had to pretend to fiddle with the instrument. "Report to the boss. Unidentified." Chapter 98. Bastard Thing. Tony Tasker was furious, and dared to raise these things for a few years, and he couldn't even find out the identity of his life. "What do you want them to do? Get down." Looking at his trembling subordinates on his knees, Tony only felt distraught and scolded him to retreat. On the other side, Osborne's chairman's office. Albert could already imagine what it would be like to be on Tony Tasker's side. "Boss, then he didn't catch you, Tony Tasker. That guy is probably going to be furious, right?" Albert nodded and smiled. "Surely he is angry. I guess he is reprimanding his men right now." Raza also gloated a little. This Tony, always so arrogant, boss, you should have given him some color. I came back from Viada today, out of pure boredom, and went to Tony's manor. Unexpectedly, I saw an interesting scene. Albert recalled. Raza thought for a moment and said, although Tony Tasker's technology is very strong, it is still a little worse than Viada. Raza was right, Albert nodded, worse than Viada, indeed. Raza was happy to hear this. Well, this Tony is not invincible. Don't worry, boss, he's no match for you. Albert shook his head and disagreed with Laza's statement. Laza, you can't take the enemy lightly at any time. Remember, don't take it lightly. Good, replied Raza earnestly. Albert nodded. Well, go get busy. Raza bowed his head and exited the chairman's office. Albert is thinking about his next steps. He has always had a strict plan, and the general direction is not allowed to be changed, but the small direction needs to be adjusted. For example, today, he saw Tony Tasker's mecha, indicating that the other party has been secretly manufacturing weapons. On his side, he also built fighters. At the moment, the progress of the two sides is about the same. But Albert knew that this would not work, and it was not enough to synchronize with the other party. What he has to do is to have a great distance. Only in this way, when he gets to the back, his pressure will not be so great. There is also the fact that although it has not been exposed today, it has been detected by Tony Task, and there are life forms outside the manor. In the future, Tony will only be more cautious. Moreover, it is not necessary to suspect that Albert is involved. If he didn't wear steel armor, Tony would be an ordinary person. If he discovers, there are superpowers on this planet, and there is such an existence that threatens his status. I can't guarantee that guy will jump over the wall and try to attack Albert. Thinking of this, Albert's brow furrowed even deeper. After thinking about it for an afternoon, Albert decided to convene a board meeting. Osborne Industry has been developing steadily, the external environment is good, and there are no internal problems. So their board of directors has not gotten together for more than half a year and has not gotten together to discuss. Today, I suddenly received a notice from Albert that the board of directors was going to be convened, and the directors were a little surprised and puzzled. Killian was also notified that he was busy doing research and didn't want to go. But Albert personally called him and wanted him to be there. Killian thought about it and decided to go. The time soon came for the day of the board meeting. The time is 3 o'clock in the afternoon on Friday. The Osborne Industrial Building is surrounded by guards dedicated to the safety of all Osborne employees. At this time, in the Osborne conference room, Albert looked at the directors present at the meeting and counted them secretly. If you read a violent novel, go to Philo Novel Network. Except for an old director who was over 60 years old and said that he was not in good health and had inconvenient legs and feet, everyone else was present. Except for Albert and Killian, the others are basically antiques. Over the years, Albert has not only made money, but after so many winds and waves, he has also been cultivated to resemble a personal refinement. Let's just talk about the directors present, half of them are his people. Even if there is no one on the board of directors, with more than 80% of the equity in his hand, he has a very high right to speak. So in front of Tasker's board, Albert never panicked. The one who panicked was Killian. Killian only had a measly 2% stake, and he generally spoke very little in front of that group. Albert has the right to speak, and when everyone is here, he doesn't drag his feet, and says, I called everyone here today to discuss Osborne's next plan and direction. At this, he paused and looked at the people present. An old director with grey hair spoke, Albert, if you have any plans, you can just say it. Yes, just say it. Another director chimed in. You've made the right decisions for so many years and have never let anyone down, and I'm sure it will be the same this time. Albert, if you have any good ideas, just say it, and we will all follow you to make a fortune. Killian spoke, too, Albert, I trust you too and won't let us down." Albert nodded, very relieved. "Thank you very much for your trust in my Albert, then I'll be straight to the point." At the last press conference in Tasker, everyone knew that they were going to cut back on their cooperation with the military. "This is a great opportunity for us in Osborne. The current environment is that there are more monks and less porridge, and we don't want to find a way to win the military's order, and if others give us the lead, we won't be able to eat the meat. It must be a good thing to cooperate with the military more." Killian began, "However, without Tasker, the military has many options, and we may not be chosen. The opportunities are won by ourselves. I suggest that our work in the second half of the year should be put on the military cooperation, promise Zhao, bidding, and everyone will work together to win the military's big orders. Do you agree?" Albert looked at the crowd and asked a question, loudly. "I agree." Killian was the first to speak, and Albert thought the same as he thought, and of course he agreed. "I agree with things, too." "Agreed." "I agree." Albert's proposal was unanimously endorsed by the board of directors. This means that Osborne's work in the second half of the year will mainly focus on discussing cooperation with the military. And Albert will also lead his staff and do all their best to win large orders from the military. Yes, that's right, the current situation is indeed that there are more monks and less porridge. But Albert believes that the monks who work hard and rush to the front will definitely grab the porridge to eat. Coming out of the conference room, Albert's mobile phone in his pocket rang. Chapter 99. It turned out to be Tony Tasker's call. Albert was a little surprised. Just as he was hesitating whether to answer, a message came, "Albert, answer the phone." Albert tugged at his lower lip, smiled, and picked up the phone unhurriedly. Tony Tasker on the other end said in a bad tone, "We Tasker are going to hold a board meeting, and with these stocks in your hands, I have the obligation to inform you." "I see." Albert noticed, and the smile on his lips deepened. Unexpectedly, his qualifications as a board observer would come in handy so quickly. Pursing his lips, he said into the microphone, "Have something important to discuss." Tony Tasker looked a little impatient. "Listen up, Albert, I don't want you to come at all, I'm just following the rules, I'll just inform you." After speaking, he hung up the phone with a snap. Albert pursed his lips and shrugged his shoulders, so angry. Tony Tasker didn't like him on the board so much, so he was going to show up, and he wanted to deal with that guy. Tony Tasker is angry almost every day these days. First of all, when I was practicing that day, a life form that didn't know the identity of 037 popped up. Secondly, it is the guy Albert, who bought a lot of Tasker stock, and now he is going to sit on the Tasker board. However, what Tony doesn't know is that the protagonist of these two things that makes him angry is Albert. Fortunately, he didn't know, and if he knew, he would probably vomit blood. In terms of strategy, Tony Tasker still can't beat Albert. In addition to Albert, the powerful shareholders under Tasker Industries have received notices from Tony one after another. As Raza came in with a hot coffee, Albert said nonchalantly, "Tony just called me and asked me to attend the boardroom." After a pause, he continued, "Laza, do you say, do I go or don't go?" "Of course you're going, boss, haven't you always wanted to know what's going on for Tasker?" Raza was jubilant when he heard this, and the boss attended Tasker's board of directors, and he had to off Tony. He's like looking at Tony Tasker's angry boss and not being able to beat the boss. Albert raised his finger and pointed, You like to gloat." Raza covered her mouth and snickered, and retorted, "Boss, what about me, aren't you also gloating?" Albert glanced at Raza and said angrily, "You are getting more and more unruly, hurry up and get to work." Raza smiled, said yes, and exited the office. After Raza left, Albert went to the Stellar Laboratory. Tony Tasker has already built a mech, and he can't sit idle, he can't sit still. But when he reached the door of the laboratory, he stopped. He asked Connors to build the Kunpeng 2 fighter, and now he wants to build a mecha? I'm afraid that not only Connors, but the entire research and manufacturing team will be overwhelmed. But he was in a hurry and couldn't wait. After some serious consideration, Albert decided to take it himself. It's been a long time since I've devoted myself to research and manufacturing, and when I go to the lab with his researchers, Albert feels quite passionate. Because of Albert's arrival, the researchers in the laboratory are more motivated and hardworking to work. Boss, you're so busy, just leave the matter of building mecha to us. Seeing Albert come to the lab in person and do research with everyone, Connors was a little embarrassed. It's okay, I'm familiar with this, you guys are responsible for helping me build a fighter. If you read a violent novel, go to Philo Novel Network. Albert said to Connors with a smile. Good. In fact, Connors liked Albert's presence in the lab, because he could discuss and communicate with him if he was there. At this time, it is not only the relationship between superiors and subordinates, but also the exchange between two researchers who love research. Their intelligence and wisdom, through communication, will collide with a deeper, ideological spark. Albert actually knew very well that in a short period of time, Osborne's industrial volume and output value would not be able to catch up with Tasker. But he never wanted to soar into the sky, and what he always believed in was steady and steady. Moreover, the purpose of making money is to promote evolution, and this is the core. After more than 10 days of hard work in the laboratory, he finally built the mecha he wanted. As soon as the mecha was created, Albert called Raza to test the mech's combat effectiveness. Raza is very happy with this kind of task, and with the convenience of work, she can also feel the majesty of wearing a mecha, so why not? Albert fought a few rounds with Raza in the mech, and each time within 3 moves, Raza was defeated. Albert frowned and shook his head. No, the combat effectiveness of this mecha is not good, it has to be improved. Raza took off the mecha and pouted and said, it's not the mecha's problem, it's my problem, fighting with you, it seems that I'm too weak. Albert still shook his head and took the mecha in Laza's hand with a resolute attitude. This is my armor, I will use it in the future, and it must be further modified. With that, he plunged headlong into the laboratory again. After 3 days and 3 nights of continuous rotation, the mecha was finally transformed. It is also a person with superpowers like Albert who can withstand 3 days without eating, drinking, or sleeping, and then successfully transform the device. If I were someone else, I'm afraid I would have fallen in the laboratory long ago. Even Connors, a conscientious workaholic, sleeps at least 4 hours a day. In his words, if you don't sleep, your brain will strike. And anyone who does research needs a very clear mind. Albert took the modified mech, put it on Raza again, and duel him. Raza replaced with a modified mech, and although he still lost to Albert, he was able to take a few more moves. Albert's brow furrowed, and he walked over and patted Raza on the shoulder. Good performance, this mecha, I'll give it to you. Ah, boss. Raza was a little flattered and a little ashamed. This mech is too precious for me to accept. Albert smiled, Laza, I designed this mecha to give it to you. Give it to me. Raza was surprised and incoherent. That's right. You are my right-hand man, said Albert, and I will arm you as well as myself. Only in this way can we face the unknown with confidence. Raza was very moved, the boss looked up to him and was willing to arm him with this mecha, which was a great honor for him. Boss, thank you, don't worry, I will not be alone in your trust. Chapter 100. Good. Albert was relieved, patting Raza on the shoulder and saying, I'm optimistic about you. Time flashed and it was the weekend again. Because he worked too hard some time ago, in addition to the fixed rest day on Saturday this week, Albert also gave himself an extra day off. I was also closed on Sundays, and I didn't go to OSS the group. However, the 2 consecutive days off did not disturb his biological clock. He still gets up at 7 o'clock on time, eats breakfast, watches the morning news, and exercises in the morning. In the afternoon, Albert drove alone to the metropolis. He went to a lot of restaurants in Manhattan, and he wanted to change places to eat today, so he found one in the Met. After drinking and eating, he went back to the villa. This is where the day's training begins. It's very boring to practice alone. Laza's combat effectiveness is relatively limited. Although he put on the mecha and was able to fight a few more rounds, he couldn't achieve the effect that Albert wanted after all. Tony Tasker used a fighting machine to aid training, and Albert clenched his fists, and he couldn't let it go. As a result, the task of building a fighting machine was sent down to the Star Laboratory. The Kunpeng 2 fighter has just completed this experiment. The researchers at the Star Lab have been tired enough lately. Fortunately, Albert is a very human boss. Considering the heavy workload and pressure of the researchers during this time, he offered a new salary and benefits. During the 3 months of building a fighting machine, the salary is doubled, and at the same time, a benefit for foreign travel is given at the end of the year. From the time Albert gave him 3 months, he knew that there was not just one, but several fighting machines to be built. And that's exactly what happened. Albert gave the order to build at least 3 or more fighting machines. Connors, who was the head of the laboratory, gladly accepted the order. Obviously, he is very confident, and a few fighting machines are not a problem for him. Of course, the prerequisite for completing the task on time is that the laboratory staff work together and work hard. In addition to the aforementioned double salary and year-end travel, Albert also instructed Caroline to send afternoon tea to the Star Lab every day. With such a thoughtful and considerate boss, there is no researcher who is unwilling to work hard. Albert only appears in the lab early on. He remembered a formidable opponent, Dr. Crocodile. Based on Dr. Crocodile, he designed an S-level training opponent, and then gave the design to Connors. Except for Dr. Crocodile, the rest is left to Connors to play freely. Connors, who got the design draft, couldn't help but exclaim, "Perfect, so perfect." In his opinion, this training opponent designed by Albert is simply a perfect existence. If it could be successfully manufactured, he couldn't imagine how powerful the crocodile fighting machine was. The pressure was on the lab, and Albert himself was not idle. In addition to eating and drinking tea, he did not forget to study combat weapons. No matter how powerful a fighter is, a powerful weapon is indispensable. A good weapon can make the fighter have a higher combat effectiveness. Albert knows this. Let's start with the combat steel knife. Albert muttered to himself, took out his notebook, and drew a realistic design for his imaginary steel knife. Combat weapons, unlike combat machines, consume so much raw materials, time, and effort. It only took Albert half a day to create the steel knife on the blueprint. But weapons often don't work satisfactorily all the time. When Albert was testing the steel knife with it, he found that the steel knife was not very damaging. Now the time has come. Albert stepped out of the secret base and looked out the window at the sky. The moon is bright and the stars are scarce, and tomorrow will be a good day. With a long sigh, he turned and went back to the secret base to continue his work. While transforming the steel knife, Albert couldn't help but smile. If you read a violent novel, go to Novel Network. I'm a workaholic like Dr. Connors now. However, it turns out that the productivity of workaholics is very high. Albert quickly got his hands on the modified steel knife. As soon as it was transformed, he couldn't wait to test it again. Then Albert was convinced by himself. This steel knife sharpens stone like clay. The damage value is several times greater than the original. Great! Albert gently touched the blade of the steel knife. This is the weapon of the superpower. Today's mission was completed, and Albert happily went back to sleep. Sunday. Today Albert plans to give himself a real vacation, no work, no training, just relaxing. After breakfast, he drove out. Driving a nationwide limited edition Maserati S7, or modified by him himself, Albert was in an excellent mood. It's no wonder everyone likes to go out in the morning. Not to mention, the wind in the early morning is extremely gentle, and the fresh air in the morning is faint in the morning light. Everything is very pleasant. Albert drove around New York City, aimlessly driving. Actually, it's not completely without purpose. He gave himself a small task today, to come out and visit the store. New York is so big, he can't go to Manhattan or the Met every time, and he has to dig into other niche but delicious restaurants. This is the cultivation of a foodie. In the past, when he didn't rely on food to accumulate energy, he ate very casually, either eating only a few bites or gobbling it up. And now, he has learned a truth: the world's food cannot be disappointed. So today he's visiting the store. Start with a small goal: eat all the food in New York. The next goal is to eat all the American food. The next goal is to eat all the European food. The ultimate goal, of course, is to eat all the world's foods. In the days when you are burdened with arduous tasks, it is necessary to give yourself some small blessings. At least now Albert will no longer hold a string, and now he can release pressure and relieve pressure well. He knew that this was a quality that a superpowered person must have. In the future, there is a possibility that the superhero will become a superhero. At that time, his tasks will be more and heavier, and his responsibilities will be greater. "Sir, please come in." Seeing Albert strolling through the door, the enthusiastic restaurant manager took the initiative to greet him and call him to come in for dinner. Albert raised his wrist and looked at his watch. It was past 12 o'clock, it was time for lunch. He nodded, took off his sunglasses, and walked inside. Albert was a frequent figure on television and in the New York Daily News. So the manager recognized him at a glance. End of the chapter. Like and subscribe for more videos like this.